staff. Gallery, welcome to the council meeting for Tuesday the 25th of September. Just remind everybody that these meetings are video recorded and go up on the website within a couple of days and stay there for, as you know, quite a long time. I'd like to, in opening the meeting, acknowledge this land that we meet on today is a traditional land for the Kaurna people and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Adelaide region and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to the living Kaurna people today. Also read you the Council Pledge. We seek wisdom and understanding as we face the duties of our united task, praying for the peace and prosperity of our city. Please be seated. A brief declaration by members of a conflict of interest. Are there any members to declare? No? Okay, we'll move on to on leave. We have nil, and apologies nil. Confirmation of minutes. Someone please move that we confirm minutes of the ordinary meeting of Council Tuesday the 28th of August and the minutes on the special meeting on the Tuesday the 11th of September be taken on as true record. Leader is to speak to it. Seconder?
No, I'm okay.
Any discussion? All in favour? Yes. Carried unanimously. Minutes reporters on pages 1 and 2. A couple of last minute corrections. It's written to be up to date as of 7 o'clock tonight. A couple of things. The reference to meeting under the ALGA section, Senator Bridget McKenzie needs to be changed to say the office of Senator Bridget McKenzie. She's our local government minister, the 4th federal minister in 10 months. Worked out, unfortunately, but I worked out on the day I was meant to meet with her that she's also the minister for strawberries. Unoccupied with other matters on the day, which is fair enough. And also, there's reference there to the Tony Moss Memorial game. I didn't attend that. That was changed. The date was changed and I wasn't notified. So I missed it, unfortunately. And with those two changes, is anybody happy to move it? Barnett?
Same thing.
Yeah, same thing.
Yes, just another correction, if I may. Guest speaker at St Helens Park Kindergarten, 60th, not 30th.
I'm sorry, it was the 60th, thank you.
Yes, with
Were you there on the
Councillor
30th?
Groot and myself and you. It was a lovely occasion.
Okay, I think that was you moving it. That was your happy to move it?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Deputy Mayor, second it. Would you speak to it?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Elected member reports and briefings. There is one provided on the screen there from Councillor Barnett for you to read. That is up to date, I understand, Councillor Barnett. It got issued a day or so ago.
No, I think it's all there. Sure, is it 20 years?
Say 60th. Yeah, very good.
It was the 60th, yes.
Are there any further elected member briefings? No? Okay. Good. Petitions. We have item 7.1, petition for the proposed footpath expansion for outdoor dining area at Mizzy Marzi restaurant. The report on pages 3 and 4, the recommendation is there. The petition has been circulated. Somebody wish to move that we receive a note of the petition. Mr. Macca, wish to speak to it? Seconder. Aaron, wish to speak to it?
Thank you.
Further debate? That concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Thank you. Deputations. We have 2 listed tonight. Not sure that Mr. Peter Hine is here. Nevertheless, we'll start with item 1, or 8.1 that is, and call forward Ms. Wendy Fusedale. Yes, under our rules, yes, everybody has to stand except me. I write the rule, that's how it works. And you're very welcome again back here. Thank you for coming. And for the purposes of the minutes, would you state your name and address?
Wendy Fusedale, 5 Azane Street, Prospect.
You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much once again for listening to some of the residents of Azane Street. There are several areas of disparity in the report to Council. This report that you are going to talk about tonight. The number of people and households in Azalea Street who are opposed to the proposal have not adequately been presented. The proposed width of the extension to the footpath and reduction of width of the road is conflicting, and one plan shows widening it by 1.2 and yet the report says 1 metre. The report also states that the outdoor dining will not be roofed and therefore has not been assessed as altering the car parking requirements, but is a veranda, not a roof. I'm not sure where is that coming down. Azalea Street being named in the report as being part of Prospect Road in terms of footfall and vibrancy. We don't want that. Petition submitted to Council at the meeting on the 26th of June, the original petition, was only presented to households at the top of the street for signing, that is the most affected by this proposal. The bottom of the street wasn't canvassed at the time. There were 21 signatories on that petition just from people in close proximity to Ms Massey. The letter from Chris Hannaford on the 4th of September gave all residents of Azalea Street the opportunity to respond and to respond to the petition that was for it. He verbally stated that those residents who phoned him, he stated to them that as a result of the letter, he did not want another petition, just feedback to his letter. Based on this request, 2 Azalea Street residents, not me, canvassed a portion of the street with a standard letter of opposition for individuals from each house to sign. Not all residents were able to be contacted and some stated they were in favour of the proposal, so of course they didn't sign. So, included in the report are 13 emails and 14 standard letters from unidentified households and individuals in response to Chris's letter. There are 8 emails and 14 letters with multiple signatories against the proposal. Some are duplicated respondents, of course. 2 emails of concerned residents and 3 emails in favour of the proposal. The petition, letters and emails of opposition have at least 15 households represented with a total of 31 signatories, not repeated, against the proposal. And of those 15 households, 4 households signed the petition in favour of it. And they stated when they were spoken to about that they didn't understand when the petition came around. They didn't understand what they were signing. And some felt pressured into signing it. Chris told us that there were 21 signatories on the petition in favour of the proposal, but the signatories from Broad Road would be discounted because they weren't living in Azalea Street. Yet the report says there's 27 signatories on the petition. So, and your diagram you've got here doesn't actually represent all the households that are against it. So I think it's a little bit weighted the wrong way. So it's contradictory and confusing and the numbers just don't add up. The main overarching points that come out of the latest survey conducted by the Azalea Street residents concern a lack of consultation stemming way back during the outdoor dining permit being approved in 2015, disgust and outrage, were some of the words that we used, at the misuse of ratepayers' funds to provide an arrangement where only one business benefits, concern re-narrowing of the Azalea Street Prospect Road with the associated truck turning, traffic congestion and public safety issues. The issues stated in the previous deputation are still relevant. They're using Milner Street as a comparison to Azalea Street in this report is ridiculous. There's no businesses at Milner Street Prospect Road intersection. There's not the same volume or type of traffic, trucks parking and entering and exiting the street. There's not been consideration of any of the factors of noise, parking and congestion that Rose Street residents have complained to Council about. So that's been ignored once again. But Azalea Street residents are closer to this outdoor dining than the Rose Street. The elderly lady at the top of the street said she's becoming very frightened by the noise emanating from the restaurant and in the street. So we've now got residents who are frightened. The proposal is located on a hill and extends 21 metres down the road on an elevated surface with a veranda which acts like a sound shelf. So Council also proposed to measures to ensure residents are not impacted upon. In this report they proposed that. But those measures are fanciful. Yet again the assumption is that the restaurant operator and his patrons will comply with the restrictions suggested in this report, which are naive because those restrictions are already in place. But they're unenforceable and are beyond Council's current committed compliance regime. Say that in a hurry. The business's continued and flagrant breach of outdoor dining permit, hours of operation, liquor licensing conditions, with patrons standing and drinking and smoking and dining, or dropping off patrons has not been considered. So why reward a business that doesn't abide by the clearly articulated rules? These breaches are not only observed by Azalea Street residents, but by other residents from outside of the area. It relies on an increase to the liquor licence, which we will vigorously, the whole of Zaze Street residents will vigorously oppose. The total cost hasn't been taken into consideration either for administrative costs, plus the costs that will be continued with policing these restrictions. That's not taken into consideration either. Council, have you not learned anything from the Rose Street realm fiasco? One last point. We urge you to vote according to your own convictions and conscience and are not swayed or forced to toe the line. What would you want to happen a few doors away from where you live? Would you like that?
Thank you.
End of presentation. Did I get it in 5 minutes?
Well, let's just say yes. Thank you. We'll just see if any questions from elected members. Are there any questions?
I will.
Councillor Barnett.
Thank you very much for your points that you've raised. And my question is there any means of some balance and reaching a balance between this with you and some others, or not?
I would say not, because the whole premise of the fact that council said they'll agree to it for 12 months. It's only increasing it by 8, and yet 12 can't sit out there comfortably now, and we admit that. So there's not 12 currently outside. Somehow the report has some crazy idea that 45 patrons could actually fit on the current area, but that doesn't allow for the 1.2 metres that's required for people to walk. So I don't know where those figures came from. The figures were a bit crazy, really. Sorry, Tom, but they're crazy. So I think that the fact that money would be put into this to extend it, we will do it in 12 months, the damage is done. It's then too late, because then Zaze Street has been narrowed at the top, already got problems with all sorts of things that I have taken out of this because I went for too long, but a lot of the issues that we face, and overall these residents that were canvassed were horrified that council was getting into the business of assisting residents in residential streets to have an outdoor dining restaurant. And whilst Prospect Road, less of an impact, not so problematic, the parking as well is a huge issue.
Thank you.
Do I get more into it?
Yes.
In asking the question, I was just going to comment about your reference to Milner Street. Milner Street does have a business on the corner of Milner Street and Prospect Road. I live on Milner Street. It's a childcare centre, and there is lots of traffic as a result of that. So I just want to clarify that, but I can't comment. I can only ask questions. So I'm about to ask a question. I'm just going to ask Councillor Barnett's question in a slightly different way, if I can. I'm just interested in if council or the owner of the property could deal with the noise issue in a different way, and council could provide some sort of assurances around the compliance and the monitoring of it, would that go any way to satisfy your concerns? So I'm picking up, I know there's a whole lot of other issues, but I seem to be picking up noise and compliance as two of the things. So if they were dealt with in a way that was satisfactory to you, would that go some way to finding a compromise?
How would council deal with that? They've stated how they would do that by, we could complain if someone parked across our drive, or by the time you ring and someone comes out, the person's moved. By the time you ring the police, when there's the noise factor, people have left. The noise is there. You're creating the ability for the issue, the problem to occur, and then you're saying here's the solution to it. But the solution isn't viable without it being a cost to council, a fairly high cost to council. And even the Liquor Licensing Branch Commission said, very concerned at the number of liquor licensed premises that are now along in close proximity within Prospect High Street. And I know that's wonderful for the region and for the vibrancy and for the footfall and for the nightlife and all of that. Fantastic. When you get the Liquor Licensing Commission saying, we are very concerned at the number in close proximity with the lack of parking and what that must be doing to the residents. So that was an interesting conversation, because I became best friend of the Liquor Licensing Commission representative during the whole liquor licensing thing.
Just a strict answer to that question.
Well, I thought it was, because it was how what can you do? Already it's a problem. So in summer and spring, so I don't, by increasing the number of patrons, and there is no policing of it now, and I don't think council can police it all the time. The damage can be done by the time someone comes out. I can't see what the solution is. It is remembering it's a restaurant in close proximity to houses, more than a Rose Street, and that's a problem. So you're actually creating a second problem, which then gives precedent to create more, I would say. Precedents.
Yeah. Further questions?
So, sorry, just one follow-up. The comment made by the Liquor Licensing Commissioner, was that a public comment? Because I've not heard that before.
No, it wasn't a public comment. It was after the liquor licensing hearings for all of the restaurants within the cinema complex, and my partner and I were involved in all of those, as well as Prospect Residents Association, in the concerns about the hours and people leaving at particular times. So that was made at the end of the final one of those.
Thank you.
Yep.
Other questions? Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Wendy, for your deputation again this evening. A quick question about Mezze Muzzy, the restaurant generally with its locale. I guess ignoring what's before us tonight, would you be supportive of Mezze Muzzy continuing to trade in its current form?
Yes, I see not a problem with that. If perhaps if the restaurateur, he doesn't own the building, of course, El Tahir does, but if it's still a problem with some of the patrons with the noise, and particularly with standing outside and drinking and smoking without eating. So that without the outdoor dining, people are taking their drinks outside to smoke, and that's breach of liquor licence, of course. So if that was policed, that would be great. I mean, the restaurant is popular and vibrant, but it didn't have outdoor dining when the person took the lease. And of course they are turning people away, but they, is it worth spending that money and then adding to the issues to solve their business problem? That is the balance, and narrowing the top of the street, which is actually a lot. I've taken a photo. It's a loss of 2 car parks. I'm determined that it's a loss of 2 car parks, and I'm sure it will lead to car parking being lost the other side. Even though the traffic showed a diagram of how cars turn. We watch them go all the way over the other side towards you as you're trying to come out of that already. So you imagine with it narrowed, it'd be the same.
Thank you. Further questions from the members? Councillor Lowe.
Can I just get a clarification? So we've got diagrams of the residents in Azalea Street who are against and residents who are for.
That's wrong.
So you're saying that's wrong, but we're saying that's right. So how can I get a clarification on if it's wrong or right?
At this stage, you can only ask the deputy what she believes is wrong, and then when we're in debate, you can ask to start.
Okay. So
You have a question, Councillor, because that's the purpose of this section.
I guess the question was to clarify that that's what you're saying, that diagram is incorrect and it doesn't represent the rights of the fors and againsts.
That's your question?
Yep.
Excuse me.
That diagram represents the signatories of the first petition in the very beginning against the decision of council of April, and it resulted in the petition being submitted to council and the deputation on the 26th of June. So since then, in response to Chris Hannaford's letter on the 4th of September and notification of this petition that all these houses are represented with, the response then, further residents were canvassed further down the street, and that's where there's the opposition I just talked about in my presentation, that there is actually 15 households represented in the no and 31 signatories within those households. So that's not represented by that diagram. And some of these households that said yes, said no, and after they signed the petition for the, yep, we're okay with it, because they didn't understand what they were being presented with, I've said that, then they sent a letter or an email saying not happy with it, once they read Chris Hannaford's letter, which explained what the proposal was.
Further questions? Deputy Mayor.
Sorry, just one more if I can. If it was possible to accommodate the extra capacity on Prospect Road instead of Azalea Street, would you be satisfied with that?
not without some sort of additional parking. And I know you can't say that it's all Mazzi's patrons that are they're not coming by bus or cycling to the restaurant. Well, they don't. But now we can't tell who the offenders are with parking, and not. It's fine. People can park out front of our house. I haven't got a problem with that. It's when they return to their cars, and it's the noise factor, the problems there, the tooting of horns and those sorts of things. So to extend it onto Prospect Road would mean less noise from the outdoor restaurant. And as I said, the noise that's going to come down, particularly if there is a roof, not sure if there is or there isn't, that's not clear. If there is a roof over this, a veranda, and it's on the hill, the noise is, as we've done studies into this, looked at the studies that looked at the trajectory of noise from outdoor dining down a hill with a roof, in a building corridor, and with the patrons that are noisy, it's going to be a problem. So Prospect Road means poor people that live in some little units just across the road there, they may have a problem. I'm not sure, it might be very noisy, but at least Prospect Road's wider and it will be on the flat rather than down the hill.
Councillor Lowe.
I'm not an acoustics engineer by any stretch of the imagination, but is there, has anyone investigated some, so I'm taking you're saying that the noise would travel down the street because it's up on a hill and you've got
It does now.
and is that, I'm trying to picture where that noise is, how that noise is making its way down the street. Is that making its way down the street because it's coming out the end? I'm assuming it's not going up and bouncing off the ozone layer in some way and coming back down and coming down the street. So I'm assuming it's coming sort of at ground level and sort of travelling down. Is that how it actually works from a noise perspective?
Councillor.
Yes. And in fact, it is, with the veranda, probably it's bouncing off the veranda and coming down the hill. So much so, last summer, my partner, very riskily, who's sitting in a middle room in our house with a window open, stormed up at midnight to a group of only 5 people standing outside the front door of that restaurant in Azalea Street there, screaming and yelling, and challenged them and asked them to please be quiet. Well, of course, you can imagine a group of inebriated people at midnight, which is one, breaching their liquor licence and well past any outdoor dining. But that's the level of the noise when it's inside the house, and we are number 5 all the way down, and there's a middle room that the window, of course, is facing Prospect Road. That's the noise. And I said in my last deputation, due to the noise of it comes down the street. It was even the other night. I actually went outside, had a look up the street, a group of people, and they were screaming at the top of their voices. So they're standing out with drinks, and it's so loud. So double glazing now on the front windows, the bedroom, and we can never have windows open.
One more.
No.
One more question. That's okay. Do you, without trying to get into solutionising right now, do we think that there is any treatment which could be considered as part of the overall design which may reduce the impact of the noise? I'm not asking for a yes or no now, but I'm just sort of thinking broadly about whether with modern design and noise-proof materials that we could look at if there's a way of containing the noise so that it doesn't cause the extent of the issues.
Wouldn't that be a massive cost? And also goes back to the fact that any outdoor dining across Adelaide does not go down into side streets except for Childers and Tint. They're the only 2 where it's close to house. The rest are well away from residential areas. And we've got councils across Adelaide not allowing that because they want to protect their residents. And I keep hearing this from elected members where I work and deliver sessions, and I talk to them about my council, and because I work with local government. So I'm hearing lots of things from different councils saying we wouldn't allow that to protect. I don't think there's anything. What's the solution is don't have an outdoor dining area in a residential street. Rose Street's got the problem. Azalea Street will then have the problem, and is it going to go on and on and on, and residents aren't considered, but the businesses are being considered. That's unfair.
Further questions from elected members? Councillor Evans.
Sorry, Wendy. Just my question again. So it seems like it seems like there are some problems with the current operation. Are you supportive of Meze Muzzy, given it is what it is, which is a Greek restaurant being in its current location, operating in its current capacity? Because we've got some outdoor dining before us this evening, but I think from what I'm hearing, this stems to a broader issue like you've tabled with us. Is Meze Muzzy a good asset, I guess, to have on the corner of the street?
I think that's irrelevant. I mean, if it's a good restaurant and people enjoy it and people, consider people in the surrounding streets, a restaurant can't do much about that other than have a sign up. And I remember Councillor Harris saying that those signs in pubs are about as useful as, I can't think of the nudge at the moment, but they are, people went, once they've had a few drinks, that's not what they're thinking about. But we know from our experience with the restaurant owner of Meze Muzzy, and I've had a few experiences where we've kindly asked, could he do something about his patrons several times, and the attitude I've got is, well, bad luck, too bad, I'm running a business, I've got mouths to feed, I was told. And also at one stage the street was blocked because he had somebody picking up takeaway. And with my niece, who's a police person, and I were stuck behind this car, she was asking them to move, and he was leaning, the owner was leaning in with the takeaway, blocking Azalea Street, and anyone who came around on a left-hand turn nearly had a head-on with cars that were trying to get around him. So my niece was about to get her badge out, but anyway, decided she wouldn't go down that path, and swore at him anyway. But there was an attitude of, it doesn't matter, and I think that's the attitude that we've had all along when there has been a problem. Never had that problem with Babanoosa, didn't have the same patronage, I suppose, wasn't the volume of people. But it's, and I'm not sure, I'm not saying it's because it's a Greek restaurant, and we could say that a lot of the patrons are of Greek ethnic origin, not very quiet people, and there's nothing to against it. It's a well-known fact. There are some ethnicities that are quite loud and enjoy life, but that is not good for when you're trying to have a quiet meal, whatever. So it's not against the restaurant per se, but it's definitely a problem, has been a problem all through, with a breach of the liquor licensing and not resolving those issues. So not asking patrons to come inside and not drink outside.
Further questions? That being the case, that's a fairly good question answer session. Thank you, Ms. Gallery. Call forward Mr. Peter Hine, if he is available here. Mr. Peter Hine. Don't pretend to be him, because that's an entirely different matter. Okay, no? Oh. We'll move on from that. He's given him ample time to turn up. Wishes to seek another invitation, I will do it at a later time. I now seek leave to pull forward item 13.1, which relates to the item just discussed, which is Meze Muzzy footpath extension and additional seating for outdoor dining. Seek leave of the meeting to pull that item forward. All those in favour? Against? Unanimous. So we'll now turn to that item, 13.1. And there is a recommendation there. I suspect there are a number of questions. Seek leave to suspend meeting procedures to enable those questions to be asked and answered without being defined by debate. Seek leave of the meeting to suspend meeting procedures until 8 o'clock should be needed. All those in favour? Against? That is carried unanimously again. So who would like to start?
Oh, you go.
Yeah, and then Chris Van.
Look, I'd just be keen on some clarity from staff around the inconsistencies between, or the alleged inconsistencies in the report and what the deputy has spoken about. In particular, the road widening width and the numbers of people making petitions. So I just think they're the two that stood out for me. So I'm just wondering if we can get a comment about some clarity on that, and then I've got a second question about traffic.
Okay, through the chair.
Okay.
Okay.
Does make it easy to be heard.
Yes, that's fine. What we've got is 14 submissions were made, 11 were opposed, 3 were in favour, but of those 14 submissions made, 13, there was an additional one of the 14 which consisted of 13 circular letters. So in all, we had, on those 13 circular letters, we had 24 signatories and we had 10 emails. It could be, it's just the way you write the report. You could look at it being 34 opposed and 3 in favour. But essentially, it's because we treated the circular letter, the 13 circular letters as one, that we say we've got 11 opposed and 3 in favour. So, you know, and then you can actually count the number of people who signed each circular letter. So, in any case, in the public consultation period that we did from the 4th of September to the 19th, so it's over 2 weeks public consultation, we got 14 submissions, 11 opposed, 3 in favour. So there were overwhelmingly, in that count, a larger number of people opposed to the expansion of outdoor dining, and some of those people also raised the issue of the footpath extension as well. So it's just how you count it.
So if I was asking how many people, not letters, how many people, it was 34 against 3. 4.
Yeah, if you ask how many people, individuals who put in
Irrespective of
signatures, in that one period, 34 opposed, 3 in favour, but then you also had the petitions as well, which were one which Wendy brought forward and one which the owner brought forward.
And do you have, off the top of your head, the numbers in those 2 petitions?
I think Wendy was saying 21 in her submission and 27 in Tahir's.
Sorry, no noise from the gallery.
Yeah, 27, according to our report here, were in favour of Mesamazi, which was the Tahir submission, which we have.
So that's 55 to 30, thereabouts.
Well, I just caution these hard and fast, because some people sign both.
Absolutely, yeah.
Some are multiple people from one household, and I think you've got to get an impression from the responses rather than try and be, in my view, try and be empirical.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. I guess I'm just interested in overall volume of people who are interested in this one way or another. Second question, road widening width.
If I can just add to that argument as well, that discussion, so I should say, table 1 is correct. It identifies the responses from the petition. Now, yes, there was further consultation, but at the time, this is the responses from the petition, so it is correct. In terms of width, all I can give you is it's approximately 10 metres wide. I know that I'm not unable to verify whether it's 1 or 1.1 or 1.2 metres wide, but it's approximately 1 metre wide, which reduced the road width to approximately 9 metres wide.
Are we able to get that advice before we vote?
Yes, I can make a phone call.
Sorry, I've read it. It's 10.2 and it's 1.2 extension, so it's 9 metres remaining. Is that so? You just want to verify?
I'll verify that.
Yes, it's about 100 mil.
I just wanted to clarify that 9 metres is currently wider than Milner Street. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, can I, just the other question, 2 other questions. So one, on the traffic diagram on the aerial shot on page number, sorry, so help me. Yeah, 44. Page 44, correct. The turning diagram for the vehicle travelling north, can I just, it looks like it would have to go onto the centre white line in order to turn to the street safely, is that correct?
Yeah.
Right. Last question for me for now is, in terms of compliance, is there an additional cost? Sorry, what would the net difference be if the compliance activity was greater in this particular location than what it is now? So if we actually said we want to monitor that site more heavily than we do now, what does that look like from a compliance point of view? Is that possible? Maybe I'll ask it as a question, is that possible?
Also, I'd like to think about, in terms of response, how much it would cost.
Yeah, probably the cost is a bad question, so I'll take that back. I guess it's more about our capacity to increase compliance on sites which we deem may be problematic in the future, whether we can do that.
What would that compliance look like?
It'd be a combination of utilising our staff or outsourcing to a private company to undertake further inspections.
And if any business owner in City of Prospect was trading outside its approved hours, that would be a breach of the liquor licence.
Sorry,
What's that?
Chair, that would be a breach of the liquor licence, but it would also be a breach of our permit. So, and then we would enforce the liquor, or inform the Liquor Licensing Commission that they were breaching their permit. We can withdraw our permit for them to have any additional seats. So we can actually have a enforcement regime that could work. I suppose that's the point.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Stephen,
Yes. I have written down here, on balance, there are too many flaws in this process, and that's basically how I feel.
debate if we can just stick to questions at the moment.
Questions? I thought we had, it wasn't just questions.
Well, I mean, sure, but we'll run out of time if we start debating. I'd rather debate when we go to debate.
All right then, so I had the querying about the 1.2 or the 1 metre. I had the query about acoustics, is it a roof or not, is who pays for that. I have queries about the community consultation process, which is so flawed you could drive a bus through it on a whole lot of counts. You know, on the balance of this, it would be impossible for me to vote for it.
I think there was a comment there.
Yes, a comment? Yeah.
Questions? Sorry, Alison and Mike.
Yeah, I just had a question for the director. I'm just trying to work out at the neck of the street, you said it would be 9 metres when it's extended, and that's still greater than Milner Street, which is around about 8 or 8.2, so it's still wider than Milner Street, even with the extension.
My understanding it's wider than Rose, wider than Myrtle. Is that all you had? Mike?
Question about when a complaint's made to the Liquor Licensing Commission, where does that go? Who deals with it? How does it get dealt with? Does it come back to council? So if there's a problem, so the deputy spoke a lot about how there's constant breaking of outside of hours, etc. So somebody must have put in a complaint to the Liquor Licensing Commission, if that's the case. That's what I would do. But where does that complaint go? And is council informed about any complaints so that we can deal with it?
Through the chair, we don't get those complaints. They don't ring us up. They don't email us. They don't tell us directly that there is an issue. So I think if this was to be approved, we would have to not only set up that enforcement regime, but also set up a monitoring regime with the Liquor Licensing Commission. But we haven't got any. They haven't got an active regime of notifying us.
Is anyone aware that there have been complaints made? I don't know if there have been complaints made, but how would you know? So if we're supposed to monitor that, how would we know that a business has their agreement?
At this stage, we would only know if we rang them up and investigated it ourselves.
Or a resident told you that they'd complained.
Yes, but you'd have to see a lot of people. There's alleged breaches of liquor licensing act, but you can't just say allegedly. You actually have to have some evidence.
So just building on that question, Chris, are we aware of any complaints coming to us from liquor licensing about any of the venues along Prospect Road? In your time, yeah?
No, we haven't seen any unless they've come through to planning, but they haven't come through to us in business and innovation.
Just have a follow-up question about that, and it is in regards to the comment that the Liquor Licensing Commission is deeply concerned about the proximity of licences being given out in Prospect. I mean, is that something that's been commented on? I mean, we approve those applications. Surely, if it was a problem, the Commission would be saying no, you can't have them. And how's that not an issue in any other place where there's a strip of eating and entertainment?
We only provide notice to them about permits, and they're not providing us with any feedback. And there's been changes. Yes, that would be the feedback. And there's been changes to the Liquor Licensing Act whereby the Liquor Licensing Commission has much more power now, and there's not the dual consultation. It was much more of councils working together with Liquor Licensing Commissioner, and now it's, the legislation has changed. So there has been a disconnect. We could, and I think to a very large extent, Prospect is changing, and these we are getting more of these residential and business interface issues. So I think it's up to us to actually be more active with the Liquor Licensing Commission and follow them up more, because they're not following us up.
Taliesin and then come back. Just building on this one, the current licence is for 12 outside, and presumably they'll seek an extension to 20. Is there some reason why they haven't already done that as a condition precedent to us going down this path, or are you aware that they have and hasn't progressed, or what's the status of them applying, and therefore any complaints being brought to bear upon an application to extend it from 12 to 20?
We would only do that if council approved the additional 8 seats. Then we would, but then we would notify them. Then they would presumably grant the additional seats. There was an issue which we understood the Licensing Commission thought there was an approval for 35 seats at one point, and that seemed to be some kind of error on their part. We only ever had it approved for 12 in all of our records, and that was subsequently corrected by the Liquor Licensing Commissioner once we provided our evidence.
Match.
Back to match. So they do seem to move in with whatever we approve.
But the activity has lodged an application or issued seats.
Yes, but not for an additional liquor licence.
Yes, so
the process is they have to get ours first.
They get ours first, so he's lodged an application for 25 seats.
25 seats.
And so if council was to grant a permit, whether it was for the suggested 20 or 25, then he would take that to the Liquor Licensing Commission and say, the council's granted me a footpath permit for these seats, I need a liquor licence to match that.
I think. Sorry.
So is it a deal breaker if we the 20? So if we said let's make an amendment and compromise on both behalves, so allow it to go ahead and the construction to go ahead, because that's not going to be that doesn't seem to be too much of a difficulty. But if we said not 20, not 12, because that's already 12, and there's an increase in went somewhere to say 16. If that went back to Nez and Neze, would that be a deal breaker for them? Would they just go, no, we're out of here?
I couldn't comment whether that would be a deal breaker or not. I think they're not over the moon if they're not that excited about us saying only 20, and we haven't raised that at all with them. That it would be 16.
So
are they exercising the 12 they've got now properly? As in, are they 12 set up, tables made up and being used, 2 covers a night, like they are inside the restaurant? Is it
Not all the time, no, but they have the capacity to do that, and I have seen it full in summer.
On the outside?
Yeah, on the outside.
I think, sorry if I may, also, there will be a point at which they decide commercially it's not of benefit to them to contribute to the footpath extension. So the footpath extension would only work with a based on a contribution from the property owner, as is the guidelines that council has established. Now, they haven't signed a development agreement to do that as yet, so I would suggest that there's going to be a point at which they say they wouldn't do it. If it's only 4 seats, is there enough commercial return for them to then invest in extending the footpath? And we don't know what the answer is.
Okay. Gus?
Sure. So we talk about compliance quite a bit and monitoring compliance. We would be talking about them operating between their licensed hours to operate. Would there be anything else we would be monitoring as part of ensuring compliance? I'm thinking some of the noise and congestion issues that have been raised.
Yes, through the chair, we've got 4 compliance issues that we'd be seeking to have installed there. 1 is signs, 2 is ensuring that there are only 6 guests per table, 3 that outdoor dining ceases outside at 10:30 p.m. and making sure delivery of goods is to the rear door. And again, we would be having a regime of inspection, and that the permit would only be for 12 months.
So how would we handle noise complaints if they were received?
We would simply tally those noise complaints, and at the end of the 12-month period, we'd make an assessment about the permit and whether to extend it or not. And if they were constant breaches of the permit, we could revoke the permit as well.
So it will be reviewed again in 12 months if this recommendation gets up tonight.
Yeah.
What do you envisage that review process looking like? What sort of things would contribute towards a long-term solution, one way or another, I guess, if it were to be reviewed in 12 months? Through
the chair, it would be assessing compliance with those criteria, and also we would be listening to the residents of Azalea Street, and just if they had complaints, we would review that as well. That would be put into the mix.
Sure.
And we would also have a new policy on outdoor dining, which would be really having some new policy conditions, maybe around these 4 conditions or so that we're talking about, where there is a residential and business interface. On Prospect Road in general, it's business to business. Seems to be fine, we don't get complaints, but where we have the interface, that seems to be where we have the problem.
One final question from me. So this is an application under our Developer Partnership Grant Pilot Program. Could you just refresh our memory on why this program was set up and what actually is seeking to be achieved out of this?
I might throw that one to Director of Infrastructure, but it is essentially about increasing footfall and activity on Prospect Road.
Chris, I'll jump in there. So Council will probably recall in deliberating the budget last year, there was a proposal put forward by the previous Director of Infrastructure and Environment around having a fund to assist in increasing the vibrancy, principally on Prospect Road. So Council determined to support a budget bid to have some funds available that could be accessed if there were proposals to extend the footpath. Now that was principally around the opportunity with the cinema and with Ms Mazzy. The council debated that, and guidelines were established to ensure that it applied in the village heart and not just to 2 sites. And we haven't had any applications from anybody else. But essentially the council saw an opportunity to fund some increase or some footpath improvements with a contribution from the property owner adjacent footpath to be improved, so the community weren't funding the complete upgrade of the footpath. And so that's how it came about. We carried those funds forward into this year because they weren't fully extended. I'm not anticipating carrying it forward again unless the council directs us that we want to continue trying to seek an opportunity to improve the quality of the footpath with businesses adjacent to Prospect Road or within our village heart area.
So, a couple of questions. The deputy mentioned something about this being the only, the development, something like this going so far down a side street, there's no other examples of that in Adelaide. Is that along the lines of what was said? Is that policy across local government? Are there no examples that we can think of, or is it actually true that this is the only example where something like this is so far down the side street? Because that's what the deputy said.
As far as I'm aware, there's no policy. Staff was confirming what they know.
Sorry?
We don't believe that there's a general policy that's applied at the local government level to deal with these issues. Each council is dealing with them separately. I was just suggesting to Nathan, maybe down at Glenelg, where you've got some cafes or incursions in areas in Bowden. You'll sometimes find a cafe on a corner in a residential area, but we don't actually have a standard per se in terms of how to deal with this. And even in Glenelg, it may be zoned differently rather than being in a residential zone, might be in a commercial zone. So it's not a uniform approach.
And through the chair, Wendy did mention Childer Street and Tin Street being the only interfaces in the immediate area. And that seems like we don't have any other major interfaces, though. On Churchill Road, there's a new Sunny's restaurant there, which has got a direct interface with some apartments. So it depends how you cut it.
On Collins Street, there's outdoor dining on almost
That's
every
good.
South Bay, you think the residences are away from it. That's something you have to think about. Certainly on Ward Street, 3 out of the 4 corners. The Curious Squire was right next to a residence and an apartment building. It's closed at the moment. The next block up, Cheapo and the Archer Hotel. Pisano's has tables outside as well, so it's 3 out of the 4. The 4th corner is a very expensive non-park. Scusi, Bellini, Oxford had outdoor dining previously, so almost every corner along O'Connell Street's got preponderance of outdoor dining. So I kind of disagree with the deputy in that sense. So the existence of it is not the issue. I think I agree with Kate. This is an issue that each council has to consider on its merits each time, because there is no framework around this. We have it, outdoor dining outside Cafe Chan, over here on Flora. We have it at Chibo. They have had a liquor license, so not using it at the moment. We have it on New Nordic, but also the dining wraps around the side when they choose to at Cafe Cotto. Certainly New Nordic does. Up the upside's got dining up the front at the side of their premises that they can use if they want. So there's plenty of examples where you have but it's not exercised in a liquor license sense up to 10:30 at night. That's the key difference, which is obvious here.
Residents. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Right, okay, and then Christine next and then Mark. If I'm just trying to stick to questions,
yes.
It's not debated in it.
Yes, well, it's my understanding that complaints that go to the Liquor Licence Commission are actually confidential. So I'm just wondering how we as a council would overcome that. if we're trying to work with them and find out information about complaints and things. I don't know, the confidentiality is the issue.
Yeah, I mean, what Chris is making is that there's not a good exchange of information.
Listening to all the debate, questions and things have been said, the obvious issue is that nothing gets done at the time. The noise is being made and there's nothing, once you make a complaint, it's a question.
So you've got three groups of people. You've got the diners, you've got the residents, and you've got the owner-operators and the staff. The staff obviously don't want to have a go at their diners who've just spent a lot of money with them, who are making noise at the front of the restaurant before they go home, and in fear that they may not come back again.
Is there any way, or is there anything that we've done with the owners and the staff, the restaurateurs,
to educate them or
empower them to some way to go out, something that they can do to go out to their diners and say, look, keep it down. We're going to get complaints. We're going to get, lose our liquor. Is there anything that's been done to educate them or empower them so they can do something at the coalface at the time of the incidents? Because that's when it needs to be done. It needs to be addressed.
Through the chair, I would think that the conditions that we are proposing to put on are a positive encouragement and education in its own way to the owner to say, you're on a short leash here. You're on a 12-month permit, and that permit for even, that's a permit for the whole outdoor dining in reality. That is on notice, and it's really a question of management of the restaurant. It's up to the owner and the business owner to ensure that the waiters, that everybody is aware that there's a lot of residents out there and those residents deserve respect, and that the actual restaurant outdoor dining is to finish at 10:30. When people leave, they should be respectful. So there's a lot of things that the owner can do, and if we have an enforcement regime in place and we pick them up if they breach any of those conditions, and we really, tell them that it's only for 12 months, it's not going to be an automatic rollover, then those things are an education, and we can also talk to the building owner and the business owner about those conditions.
Just jump in a minute. That all sounds very reassuring. But what's happened to the complaints up till now? They've got a licence at 12, and there appear to have been a number of issues. Why hasn't this regime you're proposing dealt with these issues to date?
Because those conditions haven't been in place. And I think really this issue has been brought to a head, and we haven't had a enforcement regime in place. So this one would seek to put that kind of regime in place.
Last question. We haven't had a rate.
Yeah, I'm sort of, I think, I don't think it addresses my question. I mean, there's a question of putting the fear of God into the restaurateur, but is there any way that we can, rather than do that, we can support them, give them any
strategies that you can, training that they can, because I know for a fact that no waiter who's got a whole bunch of rowdy people out the front who've been drinking and having a good time, no one wants to go out there. If you're a waiter on your $22 an hour, you don't particularly want to go out there and tackle these, and talk to these people.
Okay, 22.
No, I'm not disagreeing.
They don't want to go out there and, we fear that the fact that they're going to come back and make a complaint about this poor guy and he might get reprimanded for it.
Just most of the time, anyone got any other questions for Mark and then Alison and Matt? So we'll Mark.
Just a very brief question. Has there been any conversations with the owner or the proprietor of Mezzy Mazzy to extend along Prospect Road rather than down Azalea Street?
Through the chair, yes, we have had discussions with the owner of the restaurant and also Retro Vintic, and Retro Vintic don't want to have the chairs and the outdoor dining extended in front of their restaurant because they see that as their valuable retail space where people look into their shop and, you know, buy the antiques. So that option is not really an option.
Pull us up there because obviously got something further. Just seek leave to suspend any procedures until 8:15. Should we need it? I suppose. Against this carry on.
Thank you, Chris. Presumably, most of the activation of the outdoor space would be at night. So I'm not aware that that shop is open at night. So that would be first comment. Second comment is I thought our policy was that if a neighbouring property to a business such as a restaurant doesn't activate their space during a time, for example at night, that the shop next door to it would actually have the rights to do that. So as I look at my Google Maps and I look at that site, there would be room for at least 8 chairs, if not more. I'm just wondering whether it's worth going back to the negotiation table and say, well, you know, that's kind of a solution. Well, it's a solution, may not be the solution.
There's questions around policy.
Yeah.
We could go back to Retro Vintic and have a closer look at the policy there. I mean, that's an option, but we were doing this in the context of Azalea Street widening. So, but yes, that's an option that we could take back to both the owner of the restaurant, because he also owns Retro Vintic.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got lost as to who was next. I think I had Alison and then Matt.
There's one question on, we don't have a policy on, just going back to what you said about no. So you're saying at the moment we don't have a means of enforcement. Why is that? Because I thought we had to under the Act.
Through the chair, I think these are things that are parts of the growing pains of Prospect that we actually, these are new issues that
But this has been going on for 12 months. Surely we've got contracted officers for that noise complaints.
We're also now incorporate a nuisance act.
To do a nuisance, that's what I'm saying.
Can't escape.
Exactly, we have to.
Look, certainly underneath that Act, Council is obliged to follow up on complaints. We do have an after-hours service in order to do that. I think the issue that Chris is trying to identify is we haven't had a long history of dealing with this, unlike some of the other councils. And I think there's certainly opportunity to improve the service delivery and receptionist, but it does actually come at a cost, as has already been identified, that if we do have officers available more regularly at night to go out and actually visit the site, then there is going to be a resourcing issue. And that's what we need to address through restructuring of our service delivery around field services teams.
Thank you. Matt?
Just a clarification, so an email we received today which was entitled Petition Proposed Footpath Expansion for Outdoor Dining Area. There's a list of handwritten names and addresses and phone numbers here, and it says that these people are in support of the development. So this is not under question, is it? This list of people, or is this list of people under question? That they genuinely support it or don't support it?
We've just voted to receive that petition, so you take it for what it's worth. You have to look at these things and see how many people, the same residents signed the same address, sign it, weigh out whether the same people listed on another petition opposing it. I mean, this gets a bit awkward because people change and they're all home on the same day and all that sort of thing. So, I'm sure Chris will be on answer to that.
Yeah, I think the report says that there were a number of people who signed both the petition against and the petition for. So there is, this is a valid petition. We just didn't want to publish it all because it's got individual phone numbers on there and individual addresses. So we haven't been able to, as they say, redact it all.
Thank you.
This is opportunity for compromise before it gets on the table. But I'm just looking at point 5, that so basically there's a year before we review it. Is it possible for us to actually start thinking about, like, a year is a long time in a situation like this? So if we looked at the review period, say, towards the end of daylight saving, I mean, that's a really good indication of how well things stack up and if people are complying. So instead of just dragging it out for a whole year, let's tighten up the review period. And is that a possibility, or does it have to be a year?
Can I just let that question just hang for a sec, because you're dealing with an alternate solution. Has anybody got any more? Is that okay? Have you got questions about the current report?
I've only just got one about, I picked up on what our director said. He mentioned about they're looking at our policy, outdoor dining policy, looking at new conditions. So what's the status of that? Is that going to happen or has happened, or are we re-looking at our outdoor dining policy and learning from the learnings that we've had so far?
Yes, through the chair. What we are proposing is to take all this in and look at a new outdoor dining policy in March, and look at particularly those areas where we have that residential business interface, and what are the best standard conditions, and if this was to be approved, then the learnings from our enforcement as well. So we can incorporate that all into a new policy.
I'm just wondering whether it's better to apply our learnings and not deal with this. I don't know whether you let it lay on the table or whatever you do with it until we get the new conditions, because it just seems to me like we could be making a lot of mistakes in the meantime. And it's going to be a very expensive one.
Take that as a comment.
But, yes.
Not valid at all. I'm going to be a bit rude. It's a complicated motion by the nature of what we've got before us, and I'm just aware that if we go into debate and people start amending it, it could get pretty messy and we end up with a camel, which won't help anyone and won't make us look good. And I'll defend our debating rules as, in the Act as best I can, but it'll look like a, and appreciate the informality. How many people are happy to support this in its current form, recommendation in its current form? How many people are interested in talking about a compromise of some sort? Okay, and I'll take the rest of the people who don't consider it at all. Okay, so it's pretty line ball. It seems to me that there's the issue of the table space outside Retro Vintique. I agree with that.
But I'm uncomfortable talking about this informally. I'd rather see it on the floor.
You may well. But you've agreed to suspend meeting procedures until 8:15, and I'm using it. Thank you. In terms of the compromise, the policy, in my view, clearly says that if the occupier of the adjacent property is not exercising outdoor dining, that it can be granted to the neighbour. And Chris, I'm just wondering, why hasn't that been discussed with both?
We have discussed it with Retro Vintage. We have also principally focused on the outdoor dining in Azalea Street, because that's where they wanted the outdoor dining to be. So it's a proposal that's coming from the owner and the business owner. Okay. And it is linked to the Development Partnerships Program. So we're doing it in that context. We did talk about that, but that seems to be what they want. We could come back with another proposal which would have the dining
elsewhere. But that won't be pursued while this one's alive, because this is what
Yeah,
they've asked. Okay.
I mean, you deal with what people have asked. We've done the consultation. We've tried to explore around the edges.
So I just want real clarity around that, because I think the question from Deputy Mayor was really, really clear. If there are no other questions.
I've got one. Sorry.
Yeah.
So we've done the community consultation, but I'm very confused about the whole process, because how does it hold up to what our policy actually is on community consultation?
Our policy on community consultation seeks to have a 2-week consultation period. So in that period we did do that.
Sorry, but is that the overarching community consultation policy of council, not in this policy or whatever?
We've just approved a new community consultation policy. How does this fit in that construct? Because this is in backwards and forwards between lawyers and all sorts. So that's not adopted. So we're still under the old one. We have some clarity on that. So the question's been asked, how does this fit into our current consultation policy?
Not what's in the policy, the outdoor dining policy.
Someone answer that question.
I think it does.
Existing community consultation policy. So council has adopted a draft consultation policy. But the current one, in terms of the requirements for consultation with the community and the time frame around that. And there's no doubt that there's been some pressure around trying to deal with this matter, recognising that previous deputation raised many of these issues in any event. So
You don't need to stand, but you can respond.
The statutory requirement would be a minimum of 21 days consultation under the Local Government Act.
Okay.
The policy would have to state the minimum legislative requirement to consult for 21 days.
Yes.
Can our policy override that 21 days? If we had a specific one around this particular issue?
I would say that the legislation is saying that we need to consult for 21 days if we require our policy to do so as a minimum, but I don't believe our policy should breach.
That's okay, I'm just checking because sometimes these things are changeable. You're saying that one in your view is not.
But if our policy requires us to consult on that matter, then the policy would have to be 21 days. So it's all about whether it's a statutory consult versus a voluntary consult.
Yeah.
It's naturally a question, isn't it?
Yes, yes. And just apropos of that quickly, and so if we had a community consultation process, to be fair to everybody concerned, there should be the positives and the negatives presented of the proposal, not just asking people do they agree with it or not agree with it without adequate information to make an informed decision. I don't know how far our consultation or even a draft one goes with that.
I'm just looking at it here. Says council will aim to provide at least 2 weeks' notice, this is ours, at least 2 weeks' notice of any consultation, forums or opportunities, and will ensure a period of 21 days allocated from the date of inviting involvement to the final closing date for submissions, unless a lesser or greater time frame is dictated by a legislative requirement, which is not. That paragraph might need some revisiting because it seems to not agree with itself. That's our policy. Okay, if there's no more questions, I'll call us back into...
Can I just ask a quick process question?
Sure.
So if the council was to determine that this needed more work, can I just check our options? One is to let it lie on the table and not be moved.
That would require everybody not to move it.
If it is moved, can it still be called for an adjournment and lie on the table after it's been moved?
With the approval of the members. Yep. We don't have many formal motions. I'll do my best to administer them as I...
Just checking the Act. I want to make sure I'm right.
Yes.
Governance Manager sitting here ready. Okay, I'll put us back in formal session. The report is there for you, item 13.1, pages 38 to 90. The recommendations on pages 39 and 40, sorry. And it is there are 7 components to it, as I discussed, as a complex motion. Does anybody wish to move it to its current form? Councillor De Backer, wish to speak?
I wish. Obviously it's great to hear from the deputies. It's a complex motion, and look, I'm quite frankly embarrassed that we're here talking about it. It's to do with consultation and the parking and the management of the acts under which we're supposed to follow. This is an infrastructure project, and I just want to separate out some of the things that we've been talking about. So it's an infrastructure project that's about vibrancy. Now, we're all intelligent people around the table. Vibrancy means people on the street. And so nighttime activation and vibrancy mean people on the street at night. So, you know, people who know me know that I'm into heritage and form and character. And we've been, you know, looking at the changing face of Prospect. This is a single level building that has been activated and, you know, to all intents and purposes, a successful business, well attended. And with that there comes the wicked problem, and wicked problems are ones that are very hard to solve. And they're often conflicting, so we've got what we want in the residential streets and we've got what we want for nighttime activation. So the people around the table you see here tonight unanimously voted for this motion. So Councillor Alan Harris, Councillor Christina Barnett, Deputy Mayor Mark Groot, Councillor Monica Lee, Councillor Mark Standen, myself, Councillor Matt Larwood, Councillor Tallis Evans. We all voted for it because it's about achieving our nighttime activation and vibrancy on the streets at night. What we're not supportive of is the poor consultation process. What we're not supportive of is the poor parking outcomes in recent reports that haven't identified areas where we can increase parking and spend the near $500,000 we've got in our car parking fund. And to understand, we've got $450,000 in it, and I just think it's a disgrace. So what should have been done simply under delegation has come out on the council floor, and I'm just ashamed of the way it's come out. So I'll just talk more widely how I'm supportive of nighttime activation. This is generally, we don't pick favourites. We work with our community. So Vine Street also has an outdoor space for people. Rose Street has an outdoor space for people. We've got Ministra down on Churchill Road has an outdoor space for people. Myself and Councillor Larwood and Councillor Christina Barnett attended a fantastic forum the other week, which was a bike forum. And again, it's creating places for people and not cars. So I think generally everyone is quite supportive of that. And really what I'd like to reiterate is I'd like to restore confidence in the legislation. So it's the Liquor Licensing Act. If they do the wrong thing, they get their licence taken away. So I have confidence in that, and I need to have confidence in the staff in that. And same with the Litter and Nuisance Act. You know, that's legislation that's there. I don't know why we're tying ourselves in knots for special rules for some restaurants and not for others. So that's the way that I'm approaching it, and that's why I'm supporting it. Now we live in the area of compromise, and unfortunately, as a council, we can't please everyone. It's just not possible. So one of the things that I guess we try to do is, like, we've got a bike lanes. In the last 10 to 15 years, we've reduced the traffic from 2 lanes to 1. We've reduced the speed limit from 60 to 40. We've increased a bike lane on Prospect Road. We're trying to create places for people. So we've got all these factors, and we're trying to do our best to make it work. So this is a compromise proposal on the table. And look, I would be open to amendments on the floor, and certainly some suggestions that I've heard around the table in the informal discussions are favourable. So look, I'd like to hear other people's point of view, but I do support infrastructure projects that support our strategic plan, and really as a council that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to fulfil what we've set out in the strategic plan and the objectives that we're trying to meet. So just the other thing I'm really concerned about, and what you haven't seen, and what we've said, you know, a lot of us here are for heritage and character, is transition zones. Now that's it's a treatment that you can use at the interface between a commercial zone and a residential zone. Now, at a strategic level, we fought back against that. We don't want to see demolitions, townhouses, doctors' offices. Okay, so I'm against transition zones, and I don't want to see these noise complaints affect that at a state level.
Thank you. Have a second. Councillor Evans, Speaker.
Sure. To echo, I guess, most of the remarks that Councillor De Backer made in moving the recommendation, I think just to take a step back, and if we look at this from a strategic perspective, and ultimately we should be governed by what we say in our strategic plan, we talk about having a footfall increase in Village Heart of 100% year on year. Now we can argue with the strategic plan, we can debate the merits of that, but if that is something that we've set out and made out to our community that that's what we're going to do, we have to think about what that actually means, and we have to plan for it as well. And I'm not thinking about what we've got before us this evening, I'm thinking about how our city's being shaped into the future. And so when we talk about having policy for outdoor dining, and we talk about a consistent approach for these sorts of matters, that's really important, because we've got a strategic plan that's quite bold and ambitious. Not only do we talk about 100% year-on-year footfall increase, but we talk about 20% of businesses having peak demand after 5 p.m. within the Village Heart as well. This is what our strategic plan says. We talk about 100% increase in pedestrian footfall in Village Heart after 5 p.m, and we talk about retail and hospitality being some of the main economic drivers of our city, and we received that in a council workshop a matter of months ago where the economic team presented on the makeup of commerce that's happening within our city. We know that this is starting to bear fruit as well, so we look at buildings like the cinema where they are now contributing to the rate burden of the city. The commercial elements of our city are starting to come through, and while that's not reflected only in Village Heart, it's reflected in some of these strategies that we have in place. So by all means we can debate the merits of that, but that's what we're holding out to our community that we're going to do. We have to think about that in terms of the noise, in terms of the parking, in terms of the congestion, and in terms of how that's changing what it means to live in City of Prospect. And some of us are going to love it, and some of us are going to hate it, and some of us are going to want us to work towards it and do our damnedest to make sure that the impact is as minimal as possible. When we think about what we have before us this evening, I think it's a fairly good compromise. We're asking, in many respects, under the Development Partnership Grants pilot program that we mostly all voted for as part of the budget deliberation process, we're asking these guys to put their hand in their pocket and to contribute to an infrastructure upgrade that we're going to own, that we could deny them rights to in 12 months' time. From a business perspective, that's a good deal for us, and it's a risk that they take. They've got cold, hard cash that they're putting on the table. They have every incentive to want to make this work and to want to achieve a valid outcome for their own business, but as well for the infrastructure that they're going to help contribute towards putting in place. In terms of consultation, it's interesting hearing some of the numbers, and it does seem like the consultation process is somewhat to be reviewed. But I think more people have given us feedback on this project than they do voluntarily to the $22-ish million budget. We've had more points of feedback to this than we have to the budget. So while the process of consultation may not be strictly desirable, ultimately we have had valid community feedback on both sides, and I do respect and admire those who have come this evening to both hear the debate as well as the deputation. There is, ultimately that strategic goal in my mind. So in seconding this, I think about the equity of it. I think about what we're trying to achieve in Village Heart. I think what we're trying to achieve with our economic strategy overall, and we can debate the merits of that. But that is our strategy at the moment, and we have a business that is willing to participate in that and to help ultimately evolve our Village Heart as well as their own business. We need to be very mindful of the impact though that this does have on residents, and I don't for 1 minute forget that, and I'm looking forward to a policy that speaks to that. I'm also looking forward to the review that's mentioned in this recommendation and to seeing what that will look like in 12 months' time, how they'll be assessed, how we can interface with other government agencies like the Liquor Licensing Commission and ensure that indeed this 12-month review process is just that, a trial, it's a review, it's an opportunity for both the restaurateur to demonstrate how they can be on their best behaviour, as well as how we may be able to ultimately make these sorts of partnerships even better into the future. So I know it's a matter that not everyone's happy with. I understand there are both sides of the equation, and I fully respect and admire those who have come out this evening to hear the debate as well. So with that, I support the recommendation.
Thank you. Further speakers? Councillor Marwood.
It's never normally a good idea to speak after Tallis, but I won't have the opportunity to do that too many more times, so I thought I'd take that in this situation. This is a real tricky one for me. I did support the initial application a few months ago for the extension, and I support a lot of the things that we're doing to activate the street and to provide that vibrancy that we agree is part of our strategic plan. Some of the things that concern me though about this are there's a lack of clarity around some of the things that we're stating we want to do. So, for example, footfall in the village heart. What does that mean, and how far down our side streets does footfall actually extend? You know, if our ambition is to activate our main street, then I think we should have maybe had a more of a creative thought process around how we could do that in this instance. And as the Deputy Mayor suggested, looking for another solution which would give them the outdoor seats thereafter, without potentially having to go around the corner and cause a lot of potential issues. So I wish we'd taken a more creative approach and thought more deeply about that sort of situation. Because of the lack of clarity around this and not wanting to address it on a situation-by-situation basis, but not having a policy around it, what happens when, say, the BWS at the top of Daphne Street sells, it's got a massive backyard, and someone builds a 3-storey apartment, which they're entitled to, and they say, let's activate this corner and we'll go down the side street and we'll put outdoor dining tables and chairs down there. It's a little bit, it's hard to know. I guess my point is it's hard to know when enough is enough of this kind of stuff. You know, I love the vibrancy and I love what we're doing, but it's so hard to know what to do in this situation because of the compromise of the consultation process and just a few other aspects of it as well. It was disappointing to get a phone call from a Azalea Street resident on Friday who said that he was supportive of the development, but he was too scared to speak up because he was fearful of being bullied by people within the street. This is his words, not my words. He was fearful of being bullied, and if he was openly supportive of it, he was fearful of the recriminations which might come as a result of that. So that was really disappointing for me to hear. So, you know, I don't know, there's probably not much we can do about that ourselves, but that was something which was said to me. So overall, I'm looking forward to hearing what everybody else has got to say, and I'm reserving my position as to how I'm going to vote at the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Harris.
Yes, I didn't ask questions because I thought I was quite okay in my head with the question. I fully support what the restaurant wants to do and the outside dining and doing all these things. And I fully support what he wants to do or they want to do with the premises. And on those grounds, I'm going to oppose it. The reason I'm going to oppose it is I already had a couple of thoughts and then other people around the table raised some others. I believe this particular time we can look at different ways with sound. You said you're not a sound expert. I'm not a sound expert. If you look at that sort of stuff, I can tell you straight away with some bushes and trees and commercial curtains at an end can maybe do some different sort of things. Ceiling stuff can do it. There's an echo shell. So people that aren't me could actually look at a different way of doing it. Fitting into the main road, to me, is very good. So I'm opposing it because I believe the actual project can go ahead with better ideas coming up. Now, to rely on the liquor licensing thing, and I'm going more what I've heard tonight, but I've also heard other times, and that is almost like the old folks saying they might have a law, but they do nothing about it. It doesn't come up. And I know we've had things over the years, the liquor stuff that had come up, and, oh, well, by the time you got there, it was gone. People making noise. Now, when we done the picture theatre, and that corner, I don't think you call them picture theatre now, cinema, I think, when we done the cinema and stuff like that, I tell you, the bloke fronted me in the car 8 o'clock at night and said, mate, you can't park there. I'm an inspector. So we can police these things, but it costs money. So whoever told me off that night, we had to pay in some way. So we know to police things, but if someone's walking out of a place, and I think when you quoted that sign, the sign, people do read the signs, generally. They're not Molly the monk or can't see at all. They read the signs and it gives them a bit of a gesture. But as soon as you get outside, cool air, you start ribbing your mate and you make a noise even when you don't know you're making noise. So it's a very hard thing, but I believe there is a good enough answer to be able to fix it, possibly with the front. I think that would even be a whole lot better to me. But if we got these streets that go downwards as opposed to the other way as they go upwards, there's modern things that we can put. The hotel I used to drink in, I don't drink now much, but you go into the city ones and we had a big campaign with live bands and about music. And those same hotels are still running with music. Why? Because they found another answer. So I believe it can go ahead, and that's why I would like to support them extending. But I believe we shouldn't be passing it tonight, so we could look at, or not us, them, with our assistance to look at a different way of being done. So I'll be opposing the motion as is.
Deputy Mayor Greg.
Thank you. Look, one of the great pleasures in my life every Saturday morning is I make breakfast for my children. Every Saturday morning I make them eggs. And I have children who have different types of eggs, but I make one of them scrambled eggs. And when I make them scrambled eggs, they often say to me, actually, I don't want scrambled eggs, I want boiled eggs. And it's a great reminder that you can't unscramble the egg. And that's why I'm really concerned about some of the notions in this motion tonight. And I think I totally agree with Councillor Backer and Councillor Evans as well. I'm very supportive as a whole of what's being proposed, but I can't vote for it tonight. I don't want to vote it down. I wish we had that around the table because I think there's more work to be done. I don't want to vote no for it, but I can't vote yes for all the components that have been listed in it. So for me, there are a couple of known unknowns that we need to get sorted right. First of all is the same one that Councillor Harris mentioned, which is how do we negotiate looking maybe at the Prospect Road frontage rather than Azalea Street. So when we talk about footfall, we talk about vibrancy, we do talk about Prospect Road. That's where we're focusing our energy. We're not necessarily focusing on side streets. I think it's okay to go down side streets. I don't have a problem with that, but our focus should be Prospect Road. So that's where we should be looking at first. So I think that to me is a known unknown. The second known unknown is the clarity of our construction. So we have some lack of clarity about exactly widths and is there a roof or isn't there a roof. So I think there's some known unknowns there as well. And I think that there are really simple ways to dampen noise. And I think back to a previous life in a shed where we used to put blankets on the roof, hanging from the roof, and it's just a simple way to dampen the noise. So surely in the last 20 years we've come up with some other ways of doing that. And I don't see any advice on that here. The third known unknown to me is the compliance program. So we know that we've got a fairly blunt instrument in the liquor licence, but we don't know whether we've actually used that before. We don't know how many complaints we're getting. So for me, we've got a hypothetical proposition, which is we can use something, but we haven't seen it in action and we don't know the extent of the problem. I'd like to see some more advice on that. Yes, that's my three known unknowns. So I'm not comfortable supporting something in its entirety at this point where those known unknowns aren't known. I'd love to see the owner of the property sit down with the residents and say, can we actually talk about this? I'm not sure we've offered that solution before. And if we haven't, maybe we should. But I think for me, a simple solution is 8 extra seats on Prospect Road and then look at Azalea Street as it is in terms of existing activation or with the footpath widening and consider that on its merit. The other thing, Mayor, I wonder whether we can take the recommendations in parts when we come to the vote, because there are certainly components in there that I would support, but the material components of approving the extra seats at this point I wouldn't. But I would like the opportunity to at least support some of those, including the compliance options that are listed in paper.
In principle, happy to take it in parts. I need somebody that's director to make sure that it functions in parts, and if not, before we debate. Because there might be something that's tied to something.
Yeah, I've had a quick look. I think it's doable, but I've deferred to others with much more knowledge than me on that. So I'll just go back to my eggs. you can't unscramble the eggs. And I think it is an asset for us. It is an asset for the city to have the footpath wide, and we do have a blunt instrument, but there are too many known unknowns at this point that I can't support in its current form.
Thank you. Before I go to other speakers, I'm speaking because I think the Deputy Mayor just put a compelling argument to adjourn the matter without adjourning it. And there's not many people left to amend or adjourn. So it helps. Excellent speeches tonight, particularly like the opening speech. I think you've got us to account nicely, Councillor Backer, and rightly so. In my view, there are a number of aspects about this which don't trouble me one iota. The first is there is more capacity on the Prospect Road frontage to have more space used that's not being used. And we really need to crack that policy to enable people to use the space on other inactive frontages at night. That's our right to reserve that right. And I don't know that we've actually exercised it anywhere yet, and we should. Miraki's probably get closest to it, but they own their property and they just told their tenant, I think, come to us. Secondly, the radius and width does not trouble me one iota. If we had extended our treatment of Prospect Road down to these two blocks, if we had another 2.5 million lying around, I don't think we would have. We actually wanted to keep it all pretty tight, but just presume that we did. We would have narrowed the street exactly as we've done at Kintore, exactly as we've done at Myrtle, exactly as we've done at Rose. In fact, the designers had Rose narrower than it is. We actually just made it, teased it out a bit wider. Narrowing those intersections calms the traffic, it slows people's turning movements into those streets. It's very hard to explain that to residents who are worried that they'll kind of hit each other, but traffic engineers tell us that if you narrow it, people will slow down because they know they can't take the intersection very quickly. In this instance, the narrowing of the intersections can be paid for 50% by somebody else. I'm pretty attracted to that because every other time we've done it, apart from Rose Street, we've paid 100%. Ratepayers have forked out with the state government grant 100%. In this instance, we've got a business wanting to contribute to it. So I'm quite attracted to that. I think this place will be, it is a restaurant, it's been a restaurant for a long time. It strikes me that it will be a restaurant for a very long time. It's got a northern aspect, it runs on the Prospect Road, it's a very attractive property. Can't see someone buying it, knocking it over and doing something different. If they did, I bet they'd put a restaurant back underneath it. So to me, having somebody pay half the cost of extending that curb line, to me, is a great asset that would serve us well, whether it be lunchtime, or an ice cream shop or whatever it might be. So I'm not worried about that. The policy does encourage people to pay half the cost. I just want to stress that. Everywhere else, we've forked out all the money, apart from Rose Street and now this proposal before us. I think it's a good thing to encourage. The motion does stipulate some conditions, and from what I can tell, these are the most stringent conditions proposed to be applied to any licensed venue other than Cafe Komodo, which restricted their evening trade to 2 nights a week and entertainment to those 2 nights and Sunday afternoons, I think. And those conditions are still in place. There's about 21 conditions because they have corrugated iron between their music and the rear neighbours. They have the closest entertainment to neighbours. Wasala has the next closest entertainment to neighbours. There are plenty of instances where there's stuff going on with licensed activity very, very, very close to neighbours. So that doesn't trouble me in principle. However, there have been some issues with this site, and I do take the Deputy's advice on that, and I take that as being genuine, that there's some frustration around this particular operator. And I would be of a mind that if this was a close of dining at 9:30 p.m. for a period of 12 months, I think that would be a really good way of working out whether this could work or not. And if it didn't work, we could choose to say, well, you just get daytime trading, pal, you have to stop dining at 6:30 or something like that. But I think starting at 10:30 is probably, to me, is a little bit risky. And as someone suggested too, it's hard to move people on. But there have been quite a few questions. It wouldn't trouble me at all if someone moved to adjourn the matter, to have some of these matters considered in more detail by the applicant, and to be perfectly able to view the video of all the discussion that's gone on tonight to inform their thinking. So I'll leave it at that and put it back to the floor. I had Councillor Lee next and then Councillor Barnett.
So I've been busily trying to figure out how to make amendments to this to make it work. And I agree with everything that's been said. I think what we proposed up here does go towards the strategic plan. And, but there are problems with it, and I'm looking at the numbers, and I would rather see this be something that we can all be proud of rather than a split vote. So I'm going to move the adjournment instead of just messing around with everything up there. I think that's probably the easiest thing to do.
To advise me to when?
Till after March 2019, when the new policy is done.
I didn't really think that far ahead. Well, surely conversation can happen between you and the next council meeting. I think this is our issue. Can I ask that as a question?
Sorry, I will ask the CEO on your behalf for some advice on the matters that have been raised. CEO, what would be your advice as to what time should be adjourned to and what place?
Thank you, Mayor. I think the staff would essentially need 6 to 8 weeks in order to be able to deal with this matter with the applicant. Clearly there's going to be a lot of discussion happening with the property owner and the operator, so we wouldn't actually be in a position to present that back to you quickly. It would be if you wanted to deal with the matter prior to the end of the calendar year, quite clearly that is a peak time for business, then we would seek to bring it back to you in the November or December council meetings, and we would bring it back to you at a formal council meeting. I don't consider we would need to reconsult with the community per se. We've got all of the community sentiments, we've got your sentiments, we know very clearly the direction. It will be really a matter as to whether the property owner wants to pursue something.
Sorry, that was a very fulsome answer, CEO.
Can I have a question, sorry, of process?
A point of order, Councillor.
Order, yes.
I thought everything, Councillor Lee, but a point of order.
Yes, because it may be the only chance I get. I just want to ask a question that if the motion is moved that the matter be adjourned, does that stop the discussion straight away? Because then that means I'm not exactly being allowed to speak.
That's exactly what it does.
Yes, and I'm very peed off about that, to say the least. So if the matter, if
point of order was, does that curtail debate? It does if it's supported. Do you have a further point of order?
Yes, and so so neither that the matter be adjourned or that the matter lay on the table require a seconder. They take effect straight away.
They require a seconder and they require a vote.
So both the matter be adjourned requires a seconder, of which we've only got 2 left, and lay on the table.
My understanding is that it requires a seconder, and then it's taken to the vote straight away. So just to clarify that's how formal motions have always worked.
Yes.
Whatever formal motion is decided upon, we currently have an adjournment proposal. All of them curtail debate. If it's supported, only if it's supported. Councillor Lee has the responses to the point of order.
The discussion has.
Yes, take CEO's advice and adjourn until the November meeting.
The November meeting of council. Sorry, we need to state a reason. I think you've stated for further discussion with the applicant.
Further discussion of the applicant.
With the
applicant. Sorry, getting really confused now. There's voices everywhere. The real ones.
Focus here through the chair just to keep it nice and clear.
It's an amendment.
No.
Because it's so, Councillor, you have the floor. It's your motion to adjourn to the November meeting of council for further discussions with the applicant. Just pop the date in there so it's entirely precise. That's all right. We'll let the staff do that. There's no real debate around a formal motion. You're happy with that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask if there's a seconder for that. Barnett?
I only move it because it's one.
Speaking is a seconder, right?
Yes. Yes, that's what I was trying to get to.
Thank you for confirming that. I'm sorry, that's
That's how the rules and how.
Yes, I know that's the rules, but it would have been much wiser if everybody had been allowed to speak before that happened.
Then you wouldn't have.
Well, at least two other, you know.
Some of us have been here a long time, Councillor, and I've ruled on the points of order. I understand your dilemma, but it's not possible for everybody to speak and then move.
No, well, there have to be two left, yes.
I hate you. Okay, members, we have before us a formal motion to adjourn. There's no more discussion on that. That motion will now be put. All those in favour of the adjournment? All those against the adjournment? The adjournment is carried. That now concludes the debate on that item. Thank you. A lot of work to be done there. Ladies and gentlemen, the other here tonight for the matter regarding the Xavier Street Messy Marzi outdoor dining proposal. There will be no more discussion on that item tonight. Thank you so much for coming along. Thank you, Deputy Excuse Val, for your presentation tonight. Thank you for coming along and answering things so succinctly. And thank you for your interest in the matter. You're welcome to stay for the balance of the meeting if you wish.
All right, hang on, you got to swallow it. Got to get a bit of
For the sake of absolute and complete procedural fairness, I'll just ask if Peter Hine has arrived yet. I don't believe so. Peter Hine's not hiding anywhere. We've actually moved past that item, but I just thought I'd give him the opportunity, and I would have sought leave of the meeting to hear him if he was here. It's not here.
Blessing in disguise that he's not.
Yeah. Where, members, we do have Mr. Doreen Grant is here for item 12.2, and she's been very patient. Seek leave of the meeting to pull forward item 12.2 so that we can hear from the Chair of the Audit Committee. All those in favour? Yes, carried. Thank you. Excellent. All right, the Audit Committee annual report is on page 21. And I've just said to suspend meeting procedures until 9 p.m. to hear from the Chair of the Audit Committee. All those in favour?
Sorry.
I take it as carried, and now we're out of session. Welcome, and please, over to you.
Good evening, everyone. You've got the report in the agenda, so you've got a long night ahead of you. I'm not going to take up much time. You would all be aware that now that you've been here 4 years, that the Audit Committee established under the Local Government Act with the role of overseeing the financial and risk management processes of the council. So in the last 12 months, because I know we come every year to talk to you, we've really been concentrating and had a lot of reports on risk management, particularly to do with the CLIC program. So that's been quite a bit of work that everyone is involved with. And that's been our major focus. That is different to our normal procedures. So you've got the report there. Does anyone have a question for me?
This speaker. Are there any questions from the members?
Okay, because everyone finds Audit Committee so exciting.
You do.
You know, so well written.
You're doing such.
I like it.
I'll ask a question.
Tell us, good on you.
Corinne, thank you for your deputation and for joining us this evening. We're embarking on quite a large project at the moment in the new CLIC project. Could you give us the thoughts of the audit in terms of the governance arrangements that exist around that project and certainly the prudential review process and anything I guess the council should keep in mind as we now progress to construction and ultimately completion of that large project for us?
Yes, we considered the prudential review. That was in December, I think. It was quite a substantial one. It was quite a substantial project. Every meeting we get an update on the risk management profile, which is changing as the project moves along from conception to construction and eventually to actually occupancy. So we're in the obviously construction stage at this point.
We get an update on the project status and how everything's going, and our reports that we get are quite extensive. So the audit committee is quite confident in the reporting we're getting and the progress of the project.
Further questions? Matt. We're at a session, so standard will.
Is that another way of saying that in the audit committee's opinion the project is on budget and there's no known risks that you can see in the future which might mean that it's careering off course?
Yes, in a short word. The reports that we're receiving indicate where there's any issues that are forming and the resolutions that staff are putting forward. In any kind of big project, you're going to get some things you're not expecting or some things that don't go quite according to timetables. We get informed of those and what's going to happen to resolve that, or whether something different is going to happen to mitigate risk. So we're quite happy with what we've been receiving, that the project seems to be going on track, on budget, with no unexpected issues at this point, but we're also quite confident with the robust reporting we've been getting that if there was an issue, the staff seem quite readily, happily to raise that with us.
Right, all right, thanks.
Further questions? That being the case, thank you very much for your presentation and your answers. You're welcome to rejoin the gallery.
Well, you might wait till
He has to stay there.
and your list.
Not to be discourteous, it's a good choice. And we'll now call us back in a formal session. The items there, 12.2, recommendation on page 21. Somebody wish to move it as present for. Brett, wish to speak to it.
No, I'm okay, thank you.
I second it. Councillor Larwood, wish to speak to it.
No, that's fine.
Further debate? That concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against? It is carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you again for the presentation. Welcome to stay for the balance of the meeting if you want. Okay, on to motions on notice. Item 9.1, Councillor De Backer, events and information signage in public space.
Yes. Again, another one I'm embarrassed to have up here, but I have to read it out.
Yes, preferably. It's only small.
I'll put my glasses on then. Here we go. I know exactly. Okay. So the council review the events and information signage in public spaces with the aim to designate appropriate locations for signage structures, develop robust and quality design of the posts and framework, enable quality banners related to council activities or public information to be placed on fencing and approved hoardings, and point 2, council will remove the star droppers in all locations. Now, I apologise there's not a lot of background to this, but I'm sure if you ever got the email thread from former councillor Ashley Dixon, you might get some indication of what it's about. So a lot of our events that we have attract, I guess, a kind of temporary core people want to see it done or they want to include some alignment with our communication policy. But I think it's just to reiterate, we need to focus on who our audience is and represent our community in such a way that is organised and dignified and not damaging the infrastructure that we have, like putting stuff in garden beds and whatnot. There will also be the opportunity to identify other areas that we're currently not using. So I know there are thousands of people who shop at Bunnings and Savers, one of them, down on Churchill Road, and there's a, traffic lights that you come out and there's some poor person's blank vanilla colour-bond fence. It would be a perfect opportunity to beautify and potentially communicate. So this exercise is an opportunity to maybe look at the areas around our city and say, how can we do this better? Because there's a better solution. And we do have temporary events often, so I think it needs to be designed into, and I would, if I see a corflute on this flick building, if I'm elected member or not, I will go spare. And I just hope that has been considered in the design.
1 minute if you need it.
No, that's it. So please support the motion or a variation thereof.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Councillor Barnett.
Yes, I agree with the comments of Councillor De Backer. I think instead of over the years I've been, we've had varying degrees of quality of signage around the place. I think seeing that we do know that we have certain events, then there's also the other members of the public who are from time to time allowed to put up their promotions as well. I think, I don't know whether we actually have some standard level for this or an appropriate policy. We have it in our development plan for others. I just can't quite remember off the top of my head what our actual policy is on our own signage policy. I think it's very important. This has been raised at discussions at CLIC meeting. I know certainly from the project executive group I've attended, and I've asked at various times that we do address the matter of signage and directional signage and promotional signage, so that some of that has been discussed. But I think it would come together quite nicely if somewhere in all our plethora of policies and that we actually have a look and see if we can't draw this together. I think we've got like a communication policy, but I'm not sure whether it specifically covers this, and then staff then have some direction about the sort of level of standard that we would be hoping. Also, we haven't gone very far down electronic. LED, I nearly said LSD, but we want LED.
maybe. Sounds offense.
So, yeah, all joking aside, I think that it is an important issue. It is our public face to visitors as well as to our own residents. So I think let's get our act together.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Good.
Thank you. I will support the motion. Just a couple of quick things. First of all, I just wonder how this links in with our single-use plastic proposed policy. I'll flag that more than anything else. We should also think about what we're putting on the new improved posting form frameworks. I think we need to think that through. I'm going to put a brief amendment, and sorry, Councillor Jack, I haven't actually spoken to you about this beforehand. It's my bugbear about any motions. It's just about timing. So point 3, a report be provided to council no later than, and would seek some advice from CEOs at an appropriate timeline, just to make sure that there's a loop back.
CEO? December council meeting?
No later than the December council meeting.
Yep, I'm happy with that. December 2018, that's very clear. It's my eye for detail. And yes, sorry, I'm going to deal with that first opportunity. So
that has extended your proposed amendment?
Well, actually, can I just, almost, I just want to check around the star droppers. The intent, of course, was star droppers being used for signage, not star droppers being used for tomato bushes or any other use you might have for star droppers. Was that the intent? Yeah. I don't think I need to make an amendment on that. We've heard that it's the intent, so I'm happy with that as the amendment.
Okay, I'll just go to the move and second before I proceed to second the amendment. Movers happy to incorporate? Seconders happy to incorporate? I seek leave of the meeting. Incorporate, all those in favour? Against incorporating? Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor De Backer. Bring it to council.
Good. Councillor Larwood and Stan.
I probably should know this, but is it possible to suggest an amendment to the amendment?
There is no amendment.
Oh.
This is the motion.
This is the motion now. Okay. Can I suggest an amendment to the motion?
Yes.
The only reason I'm suggesting it is because the point 2, council remove the star drops in all locations. It seems that we've got a few things going on around the place, particularly a little spring fair somewhere over in the east coming up, which I believe is widely publicised around the city, using core fleet signs and aforementioned offending star droppers. And if we ask council to remove the star droppers in all locations, then we're kind of potentially shooting ourselves in the foot to a degree there with one of our other major objectives or initiatives that we're running at the moment. So instead of, like I fully support the intention behind this, but I don't know whether this is a practical thing to do right now to remove all star droppers, because we don't have another solution for those posters and that signage, so that will be removed from city streets if we vote for that.
So just from the chair, there are two options. One is you amend it to take that out. That's kind of contrary to the motion. Or I could agree to take it in parts, in which case people can vote for or against each part, including for or against the back part.
Better time.
That seems,
yes, the council all star droppers in all locations following the, reporting back of the report.
Something like that, yeah.
You have the floor, councillor.
What was that I just mentioned that we should change it to? Councillor Evans?
So something around, what I heard was council removed star droppers in all locations following table of the December 2018 council report.
Could I suggest to you, councillor, that I would subject to the recommendations in the report to be received in December.
That's what I was going to say next. I'm sure that wording seems practical.
Thank you. That's, so you wish to put that as an amendment? I'm going to do this.
I do, yes. Yep, I'm happy with everything else I said.
Second would be happy with that?
Yeah.
Mover, yes. Second,
yes.
Stick leave the need to incorporate. All those in favour? So that's incorporated. Thank you. Councillor Lowe, do you have anything further?
Just briefly, we shouldn't be talking about this. It shouldn't come to this. And I think that the people who are in charge of signage are letting go of the communication strategy, essentially letting go of their responsibility way too early. If this was a corporate business where someone designed a flyer or some sort of literature and just said, well, I don't care how it goes out, I've done my part. And if the outcome was poor as a result of that, then if I was the business owner, I'd be furious that all that effort and all that work had got into it and then it was let to fall down at the last minute. So I really think that it needs to be part of the communications team's responsibility to ensure that signage is installed to their satisfaction, and that's when they sign off on that job being done. I don't think they should handball it over to somebody else. And I look forward to the report that we're receiving in December dealing with and ensuring that we are able to do this in a way where we don't have to discuss it again at a council meeting.
Thank you. I'll take the opportunity to speak to the chair to say I agree entirely with what you said, Councillor Lowe, and that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I think a lot of this is about context. The Mayor talks quite often about petitions always being
much better when they're on
a sheet of paper, handwritten with scratchy signatures that have been written on a bonnet of a car. And there's nothing like a garage sale sign on a main road that's been written with a big texture and it's on a piece of cardboard. But these aren't garage sale signs. These are communications from a very professional organisation, and they should look as such. There is one resounding example of Councillor Debacker's concerns, and it's on Galway Avenue. And it's the very professional advertising communication that's going out at the moment for the encouraging people to nominate for the council elections and then vote in the council elections. Fantastic campaign that is beautiful. And the banner that is on Galway Avenue, just on the roundabout at Colin Grove, is on 2 star droppers and is knock-kneed like that to the point where it is just drooping in the middle, and it looks absolutely horrible. It looks like someone with it looks like a garage sale sign, and it needs to be addressed. It needs a couple of guy ropes just to hold the thing up, and I wholeheartedly agree with this. I don't know yet what the solution is. Sometimes star droppers, maybe they just need to be, if they're going to be put up, maybe they need to be put up in a more robust manner. But I don't know that it's the actual construct of these signs, but maybe it's just the way that we maintain them. But I wholeheartedly agree with this motion.
Thank you. Further speakers? Councillor De Backer, you wish to sum up?
Just to say thank you for the other active members, and this doesn't prohibit digital means in the future, but I think it's just addressing the core outcomes at the moment.
The debate, all those in favour? Yes, it's unanimous. Carried. Thank you. We're nearly at the end of something, but we just. Item 10, questions with notice.
Sorry.
Well,
There's the answers.
it work, councillors. Procedurally, we don't often have these. What I will ask is that Councillor De Backer reads out each question, and I'll read out the answer from the staff in turn. So,
Can I stand?
Yes, please. Question
Okay. Bloody glasses.
I'll join you.
All right. So has council administration acknowledged 2 more accidents since council resolution on 28th August 2018 relating to Edwin Avenue?
Right, sorry. Answer 1. When council administration is aware of 2 accidents within the Edmund Avenue, Rutherglen Avenue, Galway Avenue, North Street area, SA Police produce annual crash statistic report, and it is released in the first half of each year with review by council administration when investigating traffic issues. SA Police directly notify councils of crashes if there is a fatality on the local road network and request an investigation into traffic calming if warranted. Question 2.
Can I clarify anything? Okay. Question 2.
Apologies, just to clarify. Questions with notice are very formal. The answers are provided generally in advance in the agenda papers. The answer is read out. There is no opportunity for further questions or debate. There is a section after this one that's questions without notice. Karen.
Question 2. When and how has the residents group been communicated with since the council resolution?
Answer 2. Council administration has prepared a letter which will be posted to household by COB Friday the 28th, 2018, advising that discussions have commenced with DIPTI. At the public forum held on the 12th of July 2018, it was anticipated that another public forum will be held in October 2018. However, it will be rescheduled to a later date to be determined.
When and how has the residents group been communicated with since receiving this new information of the traffic accidents?
Answer to question 3. Council has not communicated any information to residents regarding the 2 traffic accidents.
How can meetings with DIPTI be expedited to address the recent accidents and the other parking issues noted in other emails?
Answer 4. Discussions have commenced with DIPTI, and as was reported at the public forum, the extent of the study must be broader than the 2 intersections of Edwin Avenue North East Road and Rutherglen North East Road, as any changes to traffic conditions at the 2 intersections would impact the local road network. At the public forum, it was also communicated that this process could take 12 months. The immediate proposal to ban riding in turn will impact traffic movements on the local road network. Council administration has asked DIPTI to prioritise this issue. However, DIPTI does not consider this issue to be a high priority. A letter from the Mayor could be sent to the CEO of DIPTI requesting this issue to be addressed as a priority. Okay, that's all to do with item 10.1. Thank you. We now move to item 10.2. We have more questions of notice, one more question notice to this item from Councillor De Backer. So as per previously, Councillor.
This is regarding the development adjacent to Barker Gardens. Given the approved development adjacent to Barker Gardens, the Wilcox Apartment, please outline the current state of consultation with the developers with respect to our open space strategy.
Answer. Council staff have been in contact with the developer of the site adjacent to Barker Gardens through the Manager of Development Services and with the South Australian Power Networks through the Major Project Coordinator. We understand there may still be an intent from the developer to explore the opportunity for relocation of the transformer and extended deck over council land. We confirm this will require a formal application to Council's Property and Assets team, and it is likely that such proposal to use public land for an extension of commercial premises will trigger community consultation. Thank you. That's that answer to item 10.2. Item 10.3, another question from Councillor De Backer with relation to assessment of residential development applications.
Correct. What is the status of Council Resolution 144/18 regarding the assessment of residential development applications, and what actions have been taken by Council officers to address better design outcomes?
Answer. Item 15.3 on the agenda deals with Resolution 144/18. As outlined in item 15.3, Council planning staff assess applications for the development plan consent against all relevant provisions of the Prospect Development Plan, including design-based provisions. Council staff are investigating extending the independent design review process currently used for significant urban corridor zone development to two-storey residential infill in the residential zone. Thank you, elected members, and I also wish to confirm, Councillor Backer, that we were all as elected members wearing glasses for that session.
Solidarity.
Solidarity. Exactly right. We're now to questions without notice. Are there any questions without notice?
Yes. Will the new conditions under the revised outdoor policy, outdoor dining policy, be able to address some of the following matters? Better interface between residential and commercial zone, accurate plans to be presented, and costing of enforcing and monitoring process, and changes in the liquor licensing and noise attenuation.
Thank you. Director. I hope you're listening. I recommend you answer yes, but that's you.
Yes, all right. Focused on that, so.
So see, the question's a serious one. There's a number of matters. There's been a policy review proposed. If the councillor forwards those 4 items,
yes,
right into you, you'll make sure that somebody gets.
Thank you, Mayor. If you wouldn't mind forwarding those, Councillor Barnett, we'll certainly ensure that they're recorded in the minutes, and I'll give the director the opportunity to respond.
Thank you.
Further questions there, notes. Councillor Harris.
Yes, just on a previous one, we had questions with notice, particularly the question 1, which was about the accidents. And until I just got this paper a minute ago, the reply centred around the first half of each year. If we're looking at coming back to the people in November and trying to sort out something this year, the police then won't have any reports of this half of the year until next year.
There's a question in here somewhere.
Yeah. So the 2 accidents, one was on the 28th of August, not prior to, not after it. It was on the night of the 28th of August, and the other one was a couple of weeks later. So when we go back to the people down the bottom, can we ring the police and get a sort of...
Really up to date.
Yeah, an update instead of waiting until next year.
Yeah, thank you. Director.
Is it possible?
Through the chair, we will contact SAPOL and see and get the latest figures from them. They may not have updated, but we will try, definitely.
Thank you. Any further questions there, notice? There being none, move on to item 12, reports of committees and regional subsidiaries and other bodies. Item 12.1, Eastern Waste Management Authority Special Board meeting minutes and tender for recyclable products. I'd like to use the word products there, CEO. And there is a recommendation there. Somebody move that. Current form, Councillor Barnett, would you speak to it?
Yes, I think it seemed a very sensible outcome, and I look forward to the results of the tenders. That we're allowed to see.
Yes. Second. I'm going to take Councillor Standard. It was a dead heat, but I'm going to go with the... You speak to it, Councillor Standard?
No.
Any further debate? Deputy Mayor. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I just have a quick question. So maybe through the chair to the CEO, what's the state of play of the current contract for the pricing of recyclables that we have through the East Waste process? So I know that we had someone here a while ago who talked about the contract still had a pricing schedule in it. So can you just give me an update of where that contract is at?
CEO?
Yes, thank you very much for the question through the chair. The board determined at the last council meeting that the contract was no longer being complied with, and a formal letter was forwarded to SKM indicating that if they were unable to comply with the contract, then it was considered that they weren't delivering the services as per the contract, and therefore we were able to go to market. So, and that was not kept in confidence, so I am able to speak to you about that. On that basis, we are going out to tender. That there has been a committee established that will go out shortly. In actual fact, there was an article in the paper last week in respect to that, and we will continue having a conversation with SKM in terms of their capacity to deliver or not.
So just a quick follow-up. Does that then constitute a breach of contract from SKM? And does that allow, do we have any rights if that is a breach of contract?
Through the Mayor, the East Waste contention is that they have breached the contract, and therefore we would be seeking legal action in respect to the inability for them to meet the conditions of the original contract.
Further debate, that being the case, Councillor Buddy, wish to sum up?
No.
The debate, all those in favour? Yes. Consider it again, all those in favour? Yes, it's carried unanimously. Thank you. The last meeting, I just sitting in over there. There. Item 13.2, Local Government Association election for President 2018-2020. There's 5 candidates. No doubt there'll be some discussion before we arrive at the meeting. I think you're leave to suspending until 9:45 should be needed. All those in favour? Against? It's carried. 5 candidates are there. You've read their nominations. I believe that all corresponded with you either directly or via me or the CEO. I think you would have received at least one piece of correspondence from each. That's 2 from some. I think from my recollection they have outlined their position fairly well. And so I'm interested in people's views on who gets our X. We have ballot papers here if we need them. I think some discussion might be worthwhile. Unless someone wishes to go to a secret ballot, we do it as first past the post.
I have a question. What happens if these people don't get elected?
It's just another ballot. Another ball and another ballot.
Why are they doing it?
It's the way it is.
It's a long and vexed story. We had some issues back when I was president about the timing of the election cycle. We hammered it as hard as we could. This was the solution. I don't believe it was a good solution. From the board at the time to change the cycle to now in order to have the new president take over at the April ordinary general meeting. My personal view is that the whole cycle needs to be re-examined. I don't think it's been done since the state election got fixed and how it got fixed in terms of when they occurred. And I don't think our cycle of general meetings is right. I think the whole thing needs review and the election needs that context. There will always be a situation where there'll be an election for elected members, an election for board that aren't on the same day. So no matter when you have it, there'll be a president that could lose the position because they get voted out, or a new one that comes on board that could be voted in. It's just a matter of trying to get that as best we can. The only way to resolve it is that all the elections are exactly the same time. I don't know how on earth you do that. It has to be either just before or just after. But anyway, that's why we are where we're at. It's still under review. Good question though. Further questions? Sentiments?
I'll test the waters. Yeah, I don't think. Yes, I think through my years, I know them all, and they're most probably, all worthy candidates, but I'll just test the waters and suggest to Mayor Anne Ferguson. Isn't Adelaide Hills?
I like to make reliably important, just to let that opposed. So,
yes, only one that's, yes. That could have been my answer.
And just perhaps just help us out your reasons for thinking that Mayor Ferguson would be.
Well, all the that seems to be sensible. She's really fairly well known, and I think would have the sense of a gravitas that the position requires and the experience that it requires. So, I mean, it's a line ball decision between any of the others. I think it's most probably because I've most probably had more to do with her, possibly than the others.
Yeah, look, again, this is putting out to experienced elected members, because I know this election is to do with the regional council for the
president of the entire association, but they must be from a regional council.
Yeah. Yes. On that and the weight of, I guess, looking at some of the councils that are closer and somehow more metropolitan in some ways, is there benefit in having people that are maybe more remote in their influence and experience at the, well, not really.
Well, it's a really good question. In my view, that's how...
obviously, getting that input from people who are, down at Narracoorte or whatever, it's a slightly different existence to the fringes of Adelaide Metropolitan.
Yeah, I think it's a judgment that you'll have to make. The board is designed to provide representation across the state. So there is that mechanism to try and get that diversity in geographic location. The regions organise themselves in sub-regions to make sure that there has to be reps from those sub-regions. This role, though, is to speak on behalf of the entire sector. So I guess in that sense, I'd probably be less comfortable with someone who comes from an extreme part of the sector, unless I was confident that they were able to move to be able to speak on behalf of all of us. That's my view.
So can I just ask a question? When you said extreme parts of the sector, you're talking geographically?
Or policy-wise. Sorry? Or policy-wise. Yeah. Politically, someone who was really keen on a particular policy outcome, and perhaps they were too confined by that. I think on a board they could add a lot of value as a single spokesperson.
Mm-hmm.
Probably in my perspective, they're all worthy. There's no doubt about that. I think some of them are more experienced than others. It's evident in their longevity on council and their seniority in their current roles. It's interesting we've got an application here from a former president. Just to be really clear, there is no rule about a former president standing again. In our rules, we have a 2-year term and it must change to a regional person or then to a city person. It's a very short duration for a leader of a major organisation. And it's not the common way around the country. So New South Wales maximum is 6 years. Victoria doesn't seem to have any maximum. Western Australia, I think, is 4 years or more. So just to let you know, there is we're at the shortest end of the presidential cycle. So just to reassure you that it might look like something else, but for another states would have no problem in the same person doing another 2-year term. You can't do it consecutively in our system. And I guess furthermore, I think of all the nomination forms before us tonight, Mayor Ferguson is
quite complete. In fact, I wonder whether I should start counting words to see if we've got over 1,000 word limit.
Yeah.
Comprehensive. And policy positions are well enunciated within it. Yeah, any other discussion? If there's none, it doesn't appear to be within the year. I might see that we put ballot papers out and ask people to X this way we went through it. So, doing that, anyone else got any questions?
I guess to go the other way, is there any feedback on anyone that we think perhaps would be less suitable for the role that we have before us?
I think they all, maybe intensity, they all have attributes which would be quite valuable. And they all have other aspects which you might think it's not perhaps the way to go. I mean, Ed Walker is the youngest, and I think there are others who are the other end of the spectrum. Brings all sorts of great things to a role. He's very, very passionate about his role. He's very experienced. I actually find this decision really difficult. This is the largest field we've had in quite some time. I can't remember a larger field.
I totally think so.
And it's very diverse geographically too.
Yeah.
So you could simply mark an X next to your preferred candidate.
Yeah. Yes.
See a first past the post. This is not a binding vote. I tell you, we have a resolution. That's the only final part of that.
Let him watch some today.
Yeah, I actually like all these people. I don't dislike any of them, so that's no help you, is it?
The next list. Oh, except this damn thing. Look, it's going again.
You adding on there, Joe?
Yeah, you're on the
In and out, in and out. And for the next one where we got the list. Way over. Keep going. We've got a list.
Tell us. Sorry, I'm holding it up.
Grab yourself a cup of tea or something, it'll take a couple of minutes.
Yeah, here we go. Yeah, so I'd like to see there, Karen Redmond. Yeah. Janet Good, she's got a lot of accountancy and all that.
Thank you.
David, I suppose. We put David in. Do we?
Let's see this rest up.
That was well.
So haven't we got to put everyone or just
no, we've got to get 8. All right, so
I reckon there's 5 photos of me between the age of 15 and 30.
Yeah, kind of.
Reckon?
Yeah,
I know.
That's in my recorded, I think.
do you have any like in your studio doing party stuff?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
couple. Yeah, couple looking pretty melody back in the day, yeah.
he's not going back on again. He's as mayor.
Yeah.
Why?
We need to have a studio. That would be the.
But I'll tell you what, I was speaking to the mayor. I was in Sydney. Was I speaking to you? No, the mayor. I was in Sydney last week. And I was in Surrey Hills, and I was having dinner at a restaurant across the road. There was a space and people were painting and drinking wine. So there was probably 30 people, and they're all between the age of and 30. That they weren't,
All right.
Zimmer frame sort of people. The painting's still lifestyle, obviously being cheated.
David,
drinking wine and having canopy.
Ladies and gentlemen.
John Trainor's not running as mayor as it said.
So he's not.
But is he run as an ordinary person?
Right.
We'll get to that though in a second.
Oh, all right.
Just to let you know the result, it's good we did seek leave to 9:45 because this tie, Erica Vickery and Mayor Anne Ferguson. So when he asked to vote again, between those
It's a murder.
who wants to change? So we'll eliminate 3.
She's great.
To get them to vote on
No. There's just all the other candidates. You have your 2.
And try to get a, so we've got North Penn's Peebles, we've got Marion, and then we've got Costello. The Trainors, most probably a question mark.
Yep.
Yeah, me too.
Younger out of those 2. Erica Vickery or Anne Shirley Ferguson. No, I said younger. I didn't ask it as older. To have been denigrating the Greeks now, now you're denigrating old women, Chris. Hopefully that's not on the record. I'm not like standing up and accusing them of being culturally insensitive. True, but still you probably can't say it.
So then she just look at you and she goes, I don't know.
What about you? Perhaps nothing's changed.
Yeah, we probably could do that. Yeah, that's actually.
She could just say that.
Should be able to have.
Oh no, look, nothing wrong with them.
Oh no, no, no.
I put up my hand if you asked me.
Right. So it'd be nice to get
I
forward.
believe in my national plea,
Thank you.
I forgot to make one point that I was going to make. Not the key point that I was going to make. Well, the key point I was going to make was it felt like we were potentially rewarding bad behaviour.
Oh no, others are right.
Evidence about poor behaviour. We're saying you've done a really bad.
So I think he's
Now we're going to grant you the opportunity to take this even more. Whether we could implement some sort of sit him down and have a stern chat. Say you've got 3 months, or you've got 3 to 6 months to
unclear wisdom.
Socks up and get your shit together, and we don't want to hear any examples of this or that or the other, and then we'll grant it to you. If he would play the odds and say, well, if they grant it to me and they put me on a 12-month bond, what's the chances of them really turning it over? Probably very limited. Yeah. But if we made him if we trained him to perform how we expect him to perform, then he might just say, well, okay, that's reasonable.
Yeah. Just like that.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
The Greeks in particular.
Seven, David,
Have a wedding there and a couple of close the road.
Pretty much. Yeah, no, that's over in Sydney, isn't it?
Ed Ferguson. Well, putting it back into a formal session,
Yeah, Tom got it.
and ask for someone to move the motion, preferably with Mayor Ferguson in the black spot. Councillor Barnett, is that what you should do?
Yes. So I'm moving that Mayor Anne Ferguson be, is it Prospect Council's nomination?
Right.
I can't see what's up there.
Position of Local Government Association President. Oh, sorry, there.
Yes, so I'll move that.
You should speak to it at all?
No.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Councillor Evans, wish to speak to it?
Oh, okay, thanks.
Any further debate? There being none, all those in favour? Against, it's carried unanimously. Thank you. On to the election for Greater Adelaide Regional Organisation of Councils. So I just have been reminded that I am one of the several candidates for this, these roles, so I will vacate the chair, declaring an interest in the role. I believe there's a proposal to have a fee attached to it, so I'll declare a pecuniary interest as well. And hand over to the Deputy Mayor.
I'll put you down as number 11. Do you want to know before you leave?
Thanks so much.
$20.
Leave before you start something.
$20 a year.
It'd be nice if this thing worked.
Okay, I might seek leave to suspend meeting procedures until 9:45, because I think there would be some debate as it was before. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried. So I might open up if anyone has any questions or comments or want to start the ball rolling. I've just been informed by the CEO that she does have some notes, further notes, information about members who have nominated for the Eastern Region Online. So if you want to know some more information, I'll open up your thoughts. We will go to a ballot, I think. So any questions or points to
Still fits in there.
or particular people you'd like to nominate?
Campbelltown, who's he?
We can confirm to you that Mayor Trainor is not running, so he is not a candidate for this ballot. So can I just ask if there's any questions or comments before we go to the ballot?
Which, I don't know.
I'll confirm there are no questions and comments.
So the Eastern Region Authority is like us, and Nord Panham St Peters, Burnside?
I'll just ask the CEO to advise us exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks very much. The Eastern Region Alliance has had a bit of a discussion around trying to get good representation from it onto the Garrock, and the intention is, I think fundamentally, that there are 2 or 3 members from each of the regions to go on to Garrock, and if it was north, south, east and west, there would be 2 from each. Having said that, I can give you some advice about the ones from ERA. So that's Councillor Crystal Mex. She's from the City of Nord Panham. She's a first-term councillor. She's spent most of her career in NRM, and she also undertakes work for Volunteering SA. Councillor Grant Pickett, he's from the City of Burnside. He is on the East West Board with myself and the other members of that board, and works at the Adelaide Showgrounds in events management. Councillor Neville Grigg from Campbelltown City Council, I'm unable to give you any information in respect to him, as the Mayor was not forthcoming in relation to him. And Councillor Don Palmer is a previous building inspector. He's at the City of Unley. He's active in the community and is committed to community outcomes.
Thank you, CEO. So any other questions before we go to ballots? I'm not aware. Can I just remind you, you need to do 8 crosses, which is not 9 or 7 to 8.
It said that Mayor John Trainor has removed himself.
One, two.
So this is first past the post as well? Yeah.
So you've got to choose 8. You've got to choose 8.
Just choose 8. All right then. 1.
They're not 8 numbers.
Just for 8 crosses.
8, yeah, just crosses.
You're just not doing preference voting. So you can do 1 to 8 if you want to keep track of your votes, but we're not going to count them as preferential votes.
Oh, what's the point?
And can I just clarify, you can, should you wish to, vote for Mayor John Trainor. He is vacating his council role in November, so they'll create vacancies. So you can technically vote for him, but it's...
I know that for 5 weeks or 5 years.
Who was this supposed to be? Pick it.
don't know how to ask this question delicately or publicly. I probably shouldn't.
I'll shut these.
Who else were there that we're supposed to have?
I just would remind you that Mary Lachlan is on this.
Yes, Christy was quite good value. Pretty there for the residents, but she's got a doctorate of volunteering. Janet Byron, she's very well thought of. Karen Redmond would be my number one pick. Excellent. And Jane. Yes, we have to go with our what's his name, era. So that's Piggott, Grigg, and David, and then Harmer.
Actually, yeah, it's the last one you have to have.
I mean, there are listen to the ocean. So in our eastern region here.
Actually, I think there's raccoons.
There's pretty much America.
Yeah. Oh, all right. So we don't really. I don't know. Did that mean that without getting blown back in the face? You did it because
do that with our dog. Our old dog was a vicious German Shepherd. It was crazy. And used to attack people and it had arthritis, so I had to put down, had it in her hand. I invited a friend over and she sort of tipped out in front of her. She said, "Where's the dog?" The dog died. She said, "Where's the dog?" And I said, "Oh, up there on the shelf." It was funny.
Yeah.
And she was laughing at it. Well, people have incorporated ashes in glass itself, so mixing it into the actual glass mixture in some way and sealing it in there, or just incorporating it in there.
Go Arthur. I'll go with Arthur. And just because I used to Region Council.
I don't know whether I go that far.
Help David, number 6.
Yes, it doesn't matter.
Well, no, you can put a cross.
Yeah, they're not. I'm just going with that.
Sorry.
They make very good things. Even though
Keep it out, you know, in case you get another.
they were really good. They were
Oh, I'm going to have to
Yeah, I know. Well, it's just like, but it's hard to really make a proper decision based on, my actions. When we've got the finances on, yeah.
I'd just like to take the order and seek leave of me to extend suspension of legal procedures for 5 minutes to 10. All those in favour?
yeah.
So we don't have all the votes.
It's going to be a job to tally the night, Joe.
That's great.
That'll be a job to tally the night.
Need to make it.
Yeah, that's right.
How do I do that?
That's right.
Comment? It's in my news feed.
Can you post it?
Terrace and post it up.
Because you still go to a
It's pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Rather than like with a pencil, I think you go to like a 30 push button.
sentences and its sharings.
Yeah, and it's judges.
Who said that?
Well, because they don't have the executive legislation.
Yeah.
So like, with us, we let go legislature, and the legislature which I guess is similar. So you would directly elect the president.
Yeah.
So that's an executive direct elected to the chiefs of staff. Yeah, so for workers, not the chief staff. So
Executive.
yeah. It's all the same.
How's the course going?
Finished for the year, thank
Yeah, I
God.
saw the pictures on Facebook.
Finished for the year. Finished for the year for most people.
Is soccer now just
Well, they have the sole leasehold of the club between now and the 1st of April, club rooms, which was one of those things where back at the time we were trying to negotiate and sort this on this out, but council got us into because they were not able to come up with a decent plan themselves. I just, once we got the toehold that we wanted, I really didn't care about certain other things. In the cool light of day, I would have said, let's get something in place for a year, and then it's fine tune it. And now it's sort of 4 years down the track, and
there's fundraising opportunities.
we would want to say we would want to hold junior outdoor like Softacross summer season stuff. And it would just it's so difficult for me to go through BOSA, and they would go, well, there's this and that, the other, and commercial costs and cleaning, and it's a federal one.
Doesn't make
not really, because it's giving all of our infrastructure to somewhere else, and it wouldn't help.
Okay, I might bring us back into formal meeting procedures. I can let you know that the nominations as per the vote were Councillor Christine Metz, Councillor Grant Piggott, Deputy Mayor Jazz.
Wait a minute, sorry.
They'll come up on the screen. So Mayor Karen Redmond, Deputy Mayor Jan Claire Wisdom, Mayor David O'Loughlin, Councillor Don Palmer, and Councillor Arthur Nangus. So I'll just wait for those to come up on the screen, and then I'll seek somebody to read that.
It needs to be sealed developer envelope.
Is device doing strange things when you press on the agenda? It comes up and then it just disappears.
Mine goes.
Yeah.
Am I going to as well? What's that?
Okay, so you can see that on your screen there, the top.
We haven't taken my friend request on Facebook.
Nominations as chosen by you. I have someone to move that way.
Ruga.
Councillor Barnett.
Yes, so move. No.
Councillor Lee, seconds. Would you like to speak to Councillor? Anyone else would like to speak to those wonderful nominations? No? All those in favour? Those against? It's carried on unanimously.
Where do we vote on 2-year terms for mayor?
So if I go into
finance right now,
Barry, without getting into it.
Borderline. Not borderline, saying borderline getting on this friendship group. No,
with the finance one. It's
244. Information page 130.
13.4.
Yeah.
The technology's fine if it works.
Deputy Mayor, now we're up to the night of elections. So item 13.4, Local Government Finance Authority
board elections and voting preference. On sick leave, this is being procedures until, say, 10 o'clock. So I'm totally sure. Those in favour? Yes, it's carried. There are a number of candidates. I'm really disappointed. I don't know many of these people at all, and I'm really sad to say the nomination forms provide very little detail about these people. I find it a little bit sad, really. I can say that there is a desire by the executive to ask the LGFA to do more, and I understand that the current leadership has been there for a very, very long time, which means they might not be there forever, and so some stability would be something that I'll keep in mind when I'm looking. One of the candidates is a sitting board member, and I would recommend that we do there. The other one is retiring. So
what's her?
Who was the sitting one? So
Annette Martin.
Right. Okay.
Aye.
And just trying to find Councillor Karen Hockley. I received an email. I don't know what others did. Separately.
A lot of people appear to be really qualified, but I honestly can't add any value to them. Yes, I think we did receive something from Councillor Hockley. Is that?
Yes, she's had quite good qualifications, I thought.
Any other comments, questions?
Where are my things gone? I'm stupid. Oh, City of Prospect.
Oh, Karen Hopkins there.
Yeah. Oh, now I can't find the name. I'm looking at my City of Prospect.
She's on page 140.
Is she? Yeah. Except I can't find anything. All right, I'll test the borders then.
Yes.
Are we doing? Yes. I've read the others. I've read Karen Hockley's, and she seems to have a lot of, the required qualifications and experience. I'm sorry, but my iPad's playing up, and as soon as I press one of the links, it just suddenly zips off, and I can't really read anything. I did read it before, she seemed to stick in my brain, in my mind.
Because she sent a separate letter, you're saying that's what you're looking for?
I think so, yes, but I think maybe it's this one I've read. I don't know. They all start to merge after a while.
Okay, so you're proposing?
Yes.
Okay.
Who's leaving? Annette Martin. She's a current board member.
Current board member seeking re-election.
Yes, yeah.
Her.
Yeah, her and Karen.
I found Councillor Hockley's letter to us. Are others found it in your emails at all? Search Hockley. Pop up.
Yes, she's occupation is management. Sorry, it just disappears again.
I'll read out. There's a number of committees that she's on, but she follows on. My professional background is in finance and accounting, including very successful investment bank and roles throughout the retail and commercial bank, including specialist commercial lending role, responsibility for assisting commercial loans. They work with the Department for Trade and Economic Development, who have responsibility for prudential arrangements with state government like private industry. And a number of other boards, community boards, sporting boards.
Banks are good places to get references from at the moment.
Banks, yes. Well, it's a position on a bank. It's our bank.
Which bank?
Yes. I don't know, tell us, all these qualifications and experience, they all kosher sort of things?
So CPA Australia and the Institute of Chartered Accountants are noteworthy, bodies. I don't really know the people, so it's hard to really say.
I think what attracted me, I think to her, was about thinking in terms of what and where we might be going with our local government finance authority and all that. About dealings more with commercial entities and that sort of things. I think that was in my mind,
So you have a mind to suggest to us, Councillor Barnett, that you'd be happy to move?
Yes, and Karen Hockley.
It would be the City of Mitcham show.
Sorry? Yes.
Oh, Charles Sturt, sorry. What was I looking at? Oh, sorry. John Sands.
Thanks for raising that view, that idea in our minds.
Sorry, I misread the. Yeah.
It's good to have members in their locations. And the other members are, I think, males on the boards. Pretty sure.
It might be first.
Anybody wish to have a ballot, or are you fairly comfortable with that? And I apologise. I will complain this process is not very informative. That's where I do. Okay, Councillor, we'll move to that formal session. Councillor Barnett, moving.
Yes, cast a vote for Annette Martin and Karen Hockley. Part 3 is
carried on item 3.
Yeah.
Thereafter, the motion is so the word in there is support or not support. Sorry. Let's seek to suspend meeting to discussion until 10:05. All those in favour? Yes, carried. Sorry, I didn't draw that to your attention. Anybody have a particular view on that? You've read the papers. There's no direct interest, but this question is coming up more and more commonly around the country, particularly through local government, but not just local government channels. Support? Any views to the contrary?
Yep.
Okay. Back
so yes.
Councillor Barnett, you were moving.
Yes. Yes.
You wish to speak to the motion any further? Do I have a seconder?
Take it.
Backer? Speak to it. Any further debate? That ends debate. All those in favour? Yes, carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 13.5, South Australian Rate Oversight Scheme Consultation Paper. It's all there before you. It's complex. I think start to work through it. Are there any questions? No? I'll be happy to move it as it is.
All right. Oh, unless anybody else does. All right. Well, I'll move it. We're just noting the report and just authorising our CEO to submit the attachments with minor amendments as our feedback. So that's what I'm moving.
Second. Mr. Larwood, would you speak to it?
No, thank you.
Further debate? Further debate, all those in favour? Yes, carried unanimously. Thank you. Job start.
Scheme.
Paper with so many moving parts in it. Item 14, protocol. These will be adopted on block unless they're withdrawn. Sorry, item 15.2. Just we change that. Yeah. Get to item 15.2 will come out because there's additional information in there. But you wish to withdraw item 15.1, Eastern Regional Alliance Chairman and CEO report? No. We wish to withdraw item 15.3, Residential Development Assessment. Councillor Backer. Item 15.4, anybody wish to withdraw the project update on Community Hub Library and Innovation Centre? That being the case, I move on block item 15.1 and 15.4. Councillor Lee to speak to it. Got a seconder? Yeah. Yeah. Move and second. All those in favour? Yes, it's carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, item 15.2 was just a change just to get real clarity into the resolution about the dates. The dates in the report, we'll just brought them into the resolution. Proposal is to close from Monday the 24th to Tuesday the 1st inclusive. So I'll be happy to move that way.
I'll move it.
Moved by Mr. Harris to speak to it.
Yeah, just a quick question first. When it says close, and it's Tuesday apparently, that we close the Monday, part of us is shut down anyway, the library and that, so they're really finishing on the Sunday, those that work, that sort of stuff. People should have more holidays, but I'm glad everyone's going to enjoy Christmas.
Sorry, were you asking a question or you just...
Oh, I didn't ask the question, I got nods.
Yeah, right.
So I'm happy with that, so I'm moving it
as
it is.
Yeah. So I'll second that. If you wish to speak to it, any further debate? That concludes the debate. All those in favour? Yes, it's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 15.3, President for Development Assessment in Prospect. Councillor Back, just a brief reason for withdrawing it. Do you wish to move it?
Yes, I'd like to move it, and I just wanted to highlight some statistics in the report.
Far away.
So as you may recall, we had a deputation to council by the Prospect Residents Association in response to perceived poor quality design or poor context design infill. And some of the concerns raised was that a lot of the residential assessments weren't going to be stacked and they would be assessed internally. And what the report, or what was asked of them, is to provide some clarity in what was being assessed and how it was being assessed. So for those of you that have not had the joy of going to a council assessment panel meeting, often those kind of developments either are seen as complex. So I guess when they're referred, it's often at the discretion of the planning manager, or they're referred to the CAP or the DAP. There's also other methods by which some things can be assessed, which includes private certifier. So if you sort of flick forward, there's a table of information on page 232 that goes through, and look, this is quite informative because it tells us what's happening as well. The number of development assessments lodged, and also some of this weight to adequate resourcing of the planning staff as well, because a lot of the turnaround times for planning assessment is kind of legislated. They're expected to turn things around in a certain period of time. So I've always been supportive of more resourcing where possible. So we've got the list of new dwellings, additions, alterations, outbuildings, demolitions, land divisions, and then if you go down, this is what I'm interested in. So development application numbers by assessment type. So planning exempt, so again I could be corrected, but I'm assuming some of these things might be to do with like sheds and garages and things like that. Complying, so 40 and 35. And then you've got the merit or non-compliant. So there seems to be an overwhelming amount of assessments that are, now the terminology that's used in planning on merit, it means it basically doesn't tick every box. But my concern around this whole on merit business is what weight is given to what component. And that's the real concern. So we've moved from a planning code or planning act to a planning and design code. And I don't know how we are reflecting design in our assessments. because the biggest pushback we get from residents, as articulated with the deputation, was the context, so referencing neighbouring buildings and the locale, referencing materiality, so stone and wood and brick and that kind of thing, and referencing landscaping and scale. So all these things that have sort of been set out in words in our development plan, and then a planner will often take them and they'll assess on merit. So that means there's a hell of a lot of things that aren't complying. So don't be fooled when you see all these buildings they passed development. They didn't really, they passed parts of it. And our development plan isn't a mandatory document. It's full of musts. Sorry, other way around. It's full of shoulds, not musts. You should have musts in it, I think. So it's a real there's lots of moving parts with the new system at the moment, and I think everyone's doing their best to keep up, but I just don't think we're doing well enough, and I think this gives a little bit of clarity, and I think this is really important for our community to see. So in discussions with the CEO, I'm sort of saying, well, how do we actually get better design outcomes? And look, I'm keeping my eye on some recent ones. I had a resident complain about there's one going to demolish on Kintore Avenue. So quite often, as an interested resident, I'll go and have a look and see what's being built in its place. Now, it's not provided publicly on the internet, but if you want to come in and look at it, you can, and I would advise all elected members to see what's replacing the one on Kintore. Now, good design is subjective, sure enough, but if you look at all the houses around it and what's being proposed, it is chalk and cheese. And so I said, well, how do we get better outcomes and have better discussions? And there has been discussions potentially about the head of planning looking at some of these two-storey buildings. I don't just agree two-storey, one-storey, but having a keener eye on design. And it's how we're actually recording it. So often at the development assessment panel level, or CAP, you'd get a quite detailed document from an architect, and they would articulate what's good about the design, the landscaping, everything like that. I don't know how that is done in-house. I don't know if there's a paragraph written, I don't know if there's a matrix completed, and I still can't see it in this report. So I will be keeping my keen eye on this, either as an elected member or a member of the public, and I think we need to do it better. We're doing a lot of development in the city, and we only get the chance to do it once. Once we've got that building, it's there for the next 50 years. We want to have beautiful buildings that are here for the next 100 years, 150 years.
Thank you.
So just note the report, and if you have people that are interested in planning, please forward them, especially the matrix, the details.
Yeah. Second, Councillor Barnett.
Yes, in my mind, this is one of our most important documents that we've had for quite some time, apart from perhaps our design review policy. This really goes to the very nub of what, what is prospect? What should we expect if we come and live here and want to build here? And to my mind at the moment, it's a real dog's breakfast, and it's getting worse. I cannot see how, when I go around, and I travel around the city quite frequently, how a grey brick with white grouting can possibly bear any resemblance whatsoever to what is in the street, in streets. The problem is, once these types of development building are built, then they start becoming, so then you can get somebody on a cap saying, there's one of those in the street. Yeah, that's the character of the street. When, and as we know, I'm not blaming those on CAP. It's a very, one of the reasons why I just never wanted to go on there, apart from a lot of other reasons. But it seems we have in our planning system, we've moved more to a default system, so that if it's, if it can't seem to be comply here or there, then by default it seems to be, well, we'll just assess it on what it is before us and not how it actually is positioned in the street and in the context of our street and in the context of the suburb that it's in and in the context of our city, in the context of being an older inner city suburb. I think so I'm really encouraged that we have reached this point. I think quite a few of us on this council and our residents outside council, we're gradually moving into this to try and actually define what is it that makes the character of our city, because like Councillor Alison de Backer said, and I've said and others said, once our old lovely old buildings go, and some of them are perfectly good, I won't say perfectly, they're very good and solid. Some of them lasted 100 years. What are we replacing them with? Most probably, I think I read somewhere, was told the life is about 30 years. So to me, what's to say about us? That we don't value our good older style buildings. We don't value when people come here to live and of the lovely character buildings and the backyards. Sure, we have to deal with housing policy and all that, but it's interconnected. But I don't see why we should be the sacrificial lambs, basically. So I'm very pleased that I think we're heading in the right direction. I hope we can just convince the powers in state government about how much we value what our suburb is. Sure, we have to have a look for the future and our future demographics, but we've seen some quite interesting housing models. There was one we had recently, I think that some of the residents attended and were quite interested, and one spoke to me just quite recently about, wouldn't it be great if we could get together a group of people in Prospect, they may be related or not, but they love the place, they don't want to have to move out, maybe they can't afford to stay, maybe the place is too big, and we can get together with the architect, get the right sort of funding, and actually help our people stay here, help to keep our character that we're well known for, and also do our bit for perhaps sustainability, because nobody seems to speak very much about the embodied energy that goes when you demolish a building. There's a whole lot of embodied energy in there. If we are true to our strategic plan about looking at the environment and being sustainable, as soon as you bowl down an old building, right, you've lost a lot of all the embodied energy that went into the making of that, and then you're replicating that, and not it's been a very environmentally sustainable.
Further speakers to decide? Councillor Lovett.
It's been interesting being on the assessment panel for a little while in my time on council, and it was quite alarming to read on page 229 that a vast majority of overall development applications, more than 80%, fall within the on merit category, which I'm not an expert at this, but if you said if it was yes or no, then at least 80%. Like if the answer was yes or no, at least 80% would be no. But that's not how it is. It's yes, no, and maybes, and that maybe seems to me to be way too big. I was just trying to think of an analogy in a business environment where you'd be satisfied with this sort of outcome, and I couldn't think of one, which was really annoying. But I'm sure if I tried really hard, I could think of a situation where if 100% of the work that was submitted, if 80% of it was knocked back for rework because you weren't happy with it, then you wouldn't accept that as a percentage, to only accept 10% of the work which came through first time as being good quality first time. You'd do something about that. So I know we're working hard toward doing as much as we can to tighten this up, and I think we've got to work toward getting that percentage of rework down to something which is far more acceptable. We seem to be in a position in our city where we don't have to be. There's a saying, price takers or price makers. It's not quite appropriate in this instance, but it's in demand. So therefore, I think we should be in a position where we can push harder to get the outcomes we want. If we were in a situation where we were desperate for people to come and invest, and knock down a bunch of derelict old houses because we were decaying and we were a situation like that, then we'd take anything, but we're not in that situation at all. So I think there's another reason why the barriers could be put up quite high. And I support what Christina said. Christina's involvement in this and Alison's involvement. This is far more deep than mine, but I recognise that we are making some headway, and we just need to keep working hard towards making as much headway as we can.
Thank you. I'll speak to this item too, and I'm grateful for the item coming forward and for the speakers so far, particularly Councillor De Backer, I think has summed it up really well. The report is comprehensive, but it doesn't cut to the chase, in my view. It doesn't address what I think are really precise requirements in the desired character statements that talk about context, talk about materiality, talk about, as best we could describe, what others might call the feel and vibe of the street. We've tried really hard to define it. We did that in 2007, it got gazetted in 2008. In my view, that's the bit where we've fallen down. I know the staff do a great job at checking plot ratios and setbacks and boundary walls and those sort of things, but I don't think we're doing enough work on the contextual matters, and that's what the community complained to me about. These things don't fit in our street. How on earth did you approve that? I've got to admit, I have to scratch my head sometimes. If you look at the map of the report, the dark shaded areas indicate where things can be approved that don't necessarily fit the streetscape. Now that was approved back in 2008, I presume. We may wish to revisit that, but in those locations, it is pretty much, a well-designed house that may not look like a house that we'd like to live in, but somebody else loves, can be approved. But they are small areas in our city. The vast majority of our city, we've asked for quite detailed contextual assessment to be done. I'm disappointed the report doesn't speak specifically to how that contextual assessment is undertaken. And I think it's worthy of a further question at some point by somebody somewhere, might be me, although I think putting it on the agenda papers would be a better way to do it, is to tell us how that assessment is done. And if it's a weakness in our assessment process, how we can remedy it. I think there's plenty of scope to review our development plan, but that bit there I think is strong enough. I just don't think that we're using it to our advantage. That being said, there's a lot of people who fall in love with a house in a display village somewhere and just want to build it on one of our streets, come hell or high water. And they find it intensely frustrating that we want them to stick sandstone and red brick on the front or something else. They have come with the wrong premise. So there's a communication exercise here that is lacking, and it's not really catered for in our development plan nor our process. But it is something that I have been advocating for on behalf of the sector. When you buy a block of land, you get a little snapshot of the planning rules applicable to that block of land. So you can't buy it without knowing that you're constrained by a heritage conservation precinct or a heavily contextualised development plan. At the moment, you can buy it without that knowledge being put in. So I think that's the push that we should have. I think our community would want that. I'm quite prepared to keep pushing it. But I have to warn you, the government's view on having 80% of things dealt with under merit is exactly as yours, as you stated, Councillor Lowe. They think it's highly inefficient. They want less than 20% to be considered on merit. They want a lot more certainty in the system. And for them, certainty means if it looks and smells like a house and it's a residential zone, it's a ticker box approval and it gets approved. In fact, it can be approved by a private planning certifier. So there is a risk here that the new system will enable faster approvals, more efficient approvals, but not that detailed contextualisation that we see in our plans. So we have to keep our eyes out for that. That's one matter. Speak to is I think Councillor Backy raised that there's a new game in town, which is the planning and design regulations. Well, kind of. The actual teeth of it, the grit, the development plans, the design codes are not in place. The headline legislation is in place, but all the old instruments are still in place. And that's what we're stuck with at the moment, which don't really deal with design in a structured way, other than what we've tried to insert in our character statement. So we have an old process going to a new one. I fear that the old process is better than the new one, but we're working really hard on making sure the new one is as good as it can be.
So there are some challenges, but I think some further work will be useful in this regard. Thank you. Any further debate? Deputy Mayor.
Look, just very briefly, I won't repeat what other people have said. I totally agree, and also very grateful that this has come before us. I just have a question, two questions. One, on the table that Councillor De Backer was referring to on page 233, it talks about planning exempt. Can I just ask for an example of a property that's planning, that is exempt from our planning rules?
Through the chair, those are the types of developments that only require a building assessment, which would be pools, some fencing, small sheds, minor demolitions, not dwellings. Dwellings require approval that are complying in most zones.
Right, okay, that makes sense, thank you. And the second question I had, and my last question, is on page 232, you refer to 4 examples where refusal has been provided for demolition, or sorry, demolition hasn't been, approval hasn't. On page 233, it talks about, let me find the number because there's an inconsistency. Actually talks about 3 being refused in 2016, 17, 17, 18. Now, it's not sure if the answer is 3 or 4. It's kind of immaterial. It's a very, very small number. And if you look at the 400 odd in 17, 18 that were lodged, and we've not approved 3 or 4 over a 2-year period, that's less than 1%. So I just want to make sure that A, my logic is correct, and B, is that correct that we've only not, that we've refused only 4 applications in that time?
Through the chair, that's certainly not my understanding of it. I was just trying to reference the second page that you were talking about.
Page 234.
It's those 4 examples we just put in, highlight that in the last 3 months or 4 months or thereabouts, there's been these 4 gone through the CAP, recommended refusal and refused.
It seems intuitively low, but I'm just trying to draw out whether
there's certainly been others. And what this report is unable to show is the amount of proposals, or the extent to which proposals vary from the time they're lodged to the time a decision's made. And it also doesn't demonstrate or highlight applications which get withdrawn often from frustrated applicants who don't want to comply with the rules, realise it's likely to be a refusal, put the shutters up and go for something else. So there's a further number that doesn't show in here.
The withdrawn numbers are in there. There's also 4. So refused is 3, 4 over the 2-year period. I agree the one about changing from here to here. I guess that would be very hard for us to understand what those numbers are.
Yes. I guess what I could say is almost no dwelling application is unchanged from start to decision. I say almost, but I'm sure that it's 100%. There's variations that are always requested, required through the process.
I could tell a story about making breakfast for my children and eggs again, but I won't. But the same principle applies. Well, I can. I've still got 3 minutes. But the same principle applies. Once that villa in Kintarabin gets demolished, it's not going to come back.
Yeah.
So, we have to be very, very careful about trying to unscramble an egg once we scramble it, but I won't tell the story. I'll support the motion.
Thank you. Any further debate? That being the case, Councillor De Backer, we should sum up.
Look, I think probably covered up most of it. I just want to thank fellow councillors for their support and, again, continued questions, and I really commend Councillor Larwood and also Councillor Lee and anyone else who stepped into the assessment panel over the years. It's really important, and even possible candidates, to sort of listen to what goes on, because I think a lot of this seems overwhelming to a lot of people, and there's a lot of words, and one of the things I've always mentioned is that pictures. I certainly discussed with the CEO the possibility of, more visual cues in the planning area of the kind of character around our city, and that might just lend itself as a bit of a tool to assist planners and indeed ourselves as a council identify who we are. Also, the CEO has written a letter to the state, and I think again the state needs to support these new planning and design codes with some architectural advisory service. We can't leave this all to planners. It is planning and design, and I think there needs to be some shared knowledge across different councils and look to other councils, maybe Adelaide City Council and St Peters and North St Peters, that do have architectural advisory service available to residents. That might be something that we could share or participate in. So thank you for supporting the motion.
We haven't done it yet, but thanks for concluding the debate. I'll now ask for those.
Oh, sorry.
To support the motion. All those in favour? Yes, it's carried unanimously. So you were just merely fulfilling the.
Well done.
Council diary, item 16 there. We have a blue tea with Jesse Dean Freeman. We have Just Floyd here in sub 502, those two events there. Ballot decks get posted out by somebody else on our behalf. The week beginning 22nd of October. Only fill yours out, please.
Oh.
The Spring Fair is on the 27th of October. See you there at the Spring Fair. General business of urgent nature. Anything urgent? Somebody wishes to blow it.
Well, I think it's urgent. I think that, can I suggest that we write a letter to the North Adelaide Footy Club, congratulating them on their win on the weekend, and something else on those lines. Maybe that with their newfound success, they'll have more revenue coming in and they'll be able to go ahead with the redevelopment of the Prospect Oval site without us.
Procedurally, can I suggest
procedurally appropriate, then I'm happy to comply.
Any matters of urgent nature? That's good, thank you. There are none. Confidential items, there are nil. Meeting is closed.